Agenda? I'm waiting for confirmation. Are there more? It's always a good indication that there's no modifications, and there does not appear to be anyone signed up from the public. Speak now. This is a good opportunity. Is dying to speak, so we'll keep moving on. And we'll go to student reps, and since Aviv has not been here, why don't Aviv, please, but Aviv, you were busy last week.
I was busy the last couple weeks, so I feel like I should have a long board report today, so I do. So last week was the Facing History Middle East debates, where students in this double period global and English class took on roles and characters of leaders throughout the Middle East and debated issues that had to do with Middle East peace and Islam and government for 3 whole days, and that was a pretty impressive showcase of their work for the past cycle. There was also a debate in the human ecology class about genetic engineering, and students in that class took different sides of those issues and worked through them. So it's been a week of debates at ACS. And so this Thursday is the first trips day. So we'll spend all day on Thursday working with our trip groups to fundraise and plan for our spring trips week at the end of May. So some of the trips this year go from fishing to spending a week in Albany. So there's really a wide array for students to choose from. And during school today, the entire school of ACS went down to the Hangar Theater to see a play called Ruminations, which is produced and put on by students at LACS. It's about students living with disabilities. And it's also being performed for the community as we speak right now. So I think that was a really great experience. And the LACS group WHAM has done a series of presentations recently regarding bullying and the Dignity for All Students Act. The program at ACS is becoming a model throughout the state for a successful and sustainable program for anti-bullying and respect within our community. And last Wednesday, we had a panel discussion called Limits of Loyalty regarding responsibility and awareness for justice and our importance in the community. Just a couple more. Last week at CSMA, there was a fashion show put on by some students at LACS to raise money for local organizations and causes. And the fashion show sold out and people had to be turned away, so that was a successful experience. And the LACS Garden will be getting underway this spring with a series of work parties. Everyone here and throughout the community is welcome to attend these work parties. They're April 22nd, April 29th, and May 5th from 10 a.m. to 4 up at the LACS Garden, which is on the north end of our campus. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Aviv.
Thank you very much.
And at the high school, and all 4 are here, either Allison or Anthony, whoever. Go ahead, Andrew, go ahead. Allison.
I'll start. So last week we had the annual cabaret night on Friday and Saturday, hosted at the Ithaca High School Cafe. It was a huge success, and it truly showed how talented our students are. The senior class of 2012 is hosting a spaghetti dinner to benefit, to raise funds for a senior trip as well as other events. So that's April 26th from 5:30 to 8, and there's a suggested donation of $10.
April is Poetry Month at IHS. Students and staff are sharing poetry over the announcements, and also April 19th is our poetry slam to be held in the library after school. On March 23rd, government students took a trip to the city of Ithaca to learn about local government, and also they met the mayor.
This Saturday, some of our Spanish students will be leaving for Spain, and they will be accompanied by several teachers, and will be spending the break in Spain. And this past weekend, the IHS Code Red team went to Washington, D.C. for the robotics competition there, and they were very successful. And also this weekend, the IHS Model UN Club sent a delegation to the Cornell Model United Nations Conference, where 2 of our students won Outstanding and Best Delegate.
The tab, which I believe all of the board members have this month's issue of, is trying to find alternative sources of revenue while expanding the reader base. They're now offering subscriptions to parents in the general community. You can contact them by email at editor@ihstatler.com or send a letter to either Miss Lynn or the Tatler at Ithaca High School, 1401 North Carey Street, Ithaca, New York. So kind of outside of ICSD business, the rowers from Cassiola Boat Club are grateful that IHS and ICSD provide showers, which are often warm, and have hot breakfast ready daily and enjoy before school.
Great. Anything else? Very good. Board responses? Go ahead, Pat.
Just like to make a comment. I believe that Oprah was also at the Model UN conference, because I saw that our own Kevin Hillgardner got his picture taken with her.
How did she do? Anyway, go ahead.
Quick question. Does the Model UN group sell hoodies?
Cookies?
Hoodies?
Oh, hoodies. I don't know. You might be able to propose a fundraiser with them.
We're on a hoodie buying cake, so you should think about it.
Red, athletics, anything? Yeah. Any other comments? And leprosy is not really indeed striking. I mean, I've got too much else on my mind.
Mitt Romney is not coming to Coke either.
Okay. The April Fool edition of, anyway, it's like the Cornell Sun, it's always good. Aviv, I was able to stop by for one of the Middle East debates at LACS. Aviv did a great job moderating a large group. I was dismayed a little bit that the president of Iran seemed to be winning a lot of debating points, but that's the way it goes, I guess. But it was very interesting. A lot of talking going on at LACS these days.
That's how we do.
Exactly. But it was a great event. We'd like to see events like that at the high school. I mean, it was really a great learning experience, and students, debating and performing in front of others. So that's always good. You guys do a great job. It's great to have others do that as well. Anything else from anyone? We'll move on. Before I lose my voice, and we'll go to the consent agenda, and we do have a correction that was handed to me by Mr. Bob Van Kuren. The date on the personnel, item B, should read April 3rd. Right, Bob? April 3rd instead of March 13th on the two spots, right? You're seeing it in the both paragraphs. Okay, and that, I believe, is the only correction. But if you go ahead and move it, at this point now, it is correct.
I'll move the consent with that one change.
Any other questions? It's not a long list. All in favor? Yeah, it's everyone. So, Dr. Brown, very quickly and efficiently, we've gotten to the superintendent's report. I hope you're ready, because
I am, Ms. May. Let me get stuff together here. Just two brief items tonight, and I can pull this one up. The first one, as we foreshadowed at the last board meeting, we've been working to schedule the community conversations in which we'll go out to the community in various places and ask questions about how folks think we're doing as a district, things we need to improve on, things we do well, and things we can build on successes. And then also share with them our Board of Education priorities and some of the work that's happening in the district. So this is hot off the presses, thanks to Kira. These are the dates that have been selected, and we'll be doing a press release tomorrow, I believe, and we'll be sharing that out. We've set up a voicemail box to allow people who can't get to these conversations to call in and share their thoughts. We also have an email address that I want to hear you at ICSD.K12 and all those other words. So folks who can't get out to these conversations can engage in this process in which we're really truly listening and learning to everyone in the community. We've had one opportunity already with the Finger Lakes Independence Center, and that was an amazing time for me to learn from so many great people about what they feel about the district and what we're doing and what we can do better. So just want to get you these dates, and again, a press release will be coming out. That'll be somewhat special. Yeah, sure.
Well, just make sure you put that phone number in the future as well.
Yeah, we're just setting it up this afternoon, so it'll be on the flyer that goes out to the community. Other questions about community conversations?
Which one is the barber?
Sid?
Two barber.
Which one is the barber? I didn't even ask that question.
Ithaca and Transformations goes to lab, so.
Ithaca. So some of these places I haven't been, so I'm looking forward to going there. Particularly the barber shop.
Well,
All right.
they cut hair.
They cut hair, yes, sir.
It's always good,
I'm sure I'll be doing a lot of talking.
All right. Jack.
it's good to have something cut, I suppose.
I have to go where other folks go, like you, Mr. Harris.
No, I don't cut this either, so we're in the same boat.
Yeah, those are not one of those rhetorical questions too. So moving on, the second item, I just wanted to give the board an update on our health and wellness program. As we said to administrators this afternoon, our Excellent District is also a healthy. So as you know, we've done much to build a health and wellness program for our employees. We administered a survey, and we had over 240 folks respond to the survey. And the two themes that emerged were people wanted access to the new health and wellness center and how to use that. And they also wanted to have healthier food options. So we've already put some things in place. We're working on what a schedule will look like to get staff members access to the health and wellness center. We'll be talking more about that in the coming months. But some things that are cool that are happening, that are going to happen in the coming month. From April 23rd through May 18th, we're going to do a walking initiative. We're going to have signs up in buildings. We're going to have staff sign in and say how much they're walking. We're asking folks to walk. We're going to be asking folks to walk during their free times during the day, after school, before school. We're going to have raffles. We're going to have prizes. We've had some donations. I think some of the donations are free sneakers to our local business. So we're going to do some things to incentivize folks to walk and talk. We're hoping to have some meetings. That'll be walking meetings. So we're looking forward to that initiative that's going to take place beginning April 23rd. And then this healthy menu for all employees. This is a cool one also. And if Denise here, she's typically here. Denise has done, she's put together a healthy food option for employees, which includes salads, grilled chicken, hummus, veggies, array of options a la carte. Folks will be able to go online and select what they wish to have. Yeah, I think every meal will be $5. They can pre-order, and I've already put my order in for a couple of months. But you can go online and order, and the meals will be delivered to you at your workplace as part of the normal delivery process that we have for food service anyway. So, yeah, Mr. Powers, we're going to make you eat now. For those high school principals and superintendent-like folks who rarely sit down to actually eat, if we're ordering online a healthy menu option, which Denise and her great staff are promoting, we're going to sit down and eat. So much more is coming. We're hoping to set up a web instance in which you can learn more about our health and wellness initiatives, and there are many, many other ideas that we're hoping to implement over the coming months and years. But just want to give you an update on where we were. And that is it for tonight. Thank you.
Very good. We have multiple budget items to discuss what's in the budget, so we're going to go right ahead and into the 12-13 budget, and really that is school district business, and really item A is proposition number 2. We have proposition number 1, is which is that dollar amount of the referendum item, meaning that's the number that the folks vote on for our proposed budget. Proposition number 2 is the expenditures from the capital reserve, 2010 capital reserve. So I'm looking at a proposition and legalese in front of me.
I'll move proposition number 2 is outlined in the agenda, and if it's seconded, I'd like to speak to it.
I'll second. J. True.
This is from the capital reserve. This is existing money, doesn't impact the taxes. This is money that the district already has to use for capital. As we've discussed previously, we can't buy anything capital without the voters' permission. So we have to ask the voters for this. In this case, it is exterior repairs at the high school, primarily on the Fall Creek side. There's some stairways going out of some exit doors that are crumbling, and some sidewalks there that'll be redone. The basketball court out at Enfield needs some attention. That'll be redone. Parking lot at South Hill Elementary. And then purchasing school buses, those yellow boxes you see driving around town. We'll be purchasing, 6, 7, 8, 9 in total buses, and then 2 Dodge Caravans for transporting smaller groups of children. We haven't done that in the past, but in order to save fuel, especially when we're only moving one or two children, we'd like to have a couple of these vans available, so we're going to buy 2 of those and a maintenance vehicle. So again, these are all replacements. The vehicles are all 10 years or more older that we're replacing. It's time to replace them. They're on a regular cycle, and this is money that's already in existence. We're not coming to the taxpayers for additional money. We're asking them for their permission to use it.
And last year, the public voted to create the 2010 capital reserve from
2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Yeah.
All right.
This is 2012.
All right, 2 years ago. But that was combining the 2005 and the 2008 capital reserves, funds in there, creating a balance in the 2010 capital reserve. And over this last year, the 2010 capital reserve was fully funded. So this is again a part of the financial plan going forward, that we will continue to use the capital reserve for vehicle purchases, and then those items, those building maintenance items that don't fall under the bond, and then also those items that we don't want to take out of operating costs. We'd rather put the tax revenues into, the classroom, supporting the kids in the classroom, and the repairs and maintenance. If we can keep those in the capital reserve, it doesn't take out of our cash operating. So, other than the fact I got the year wrong, but the 2010 capital reserve is fully funded now. We can't add any more to it, so now we have to spend that down. In the future, eventually we'll probably have to come back to the public and say, okay, we need a 2013 capital reserve because we're working off the 2010. We want to be able to keep a reserve item that we can keep repairs and maintenance, and keep the district current on the needs as they occur. So that's why this is on here. It's always very important that there's 2 propositions on the ballot. We always appreciate the support on the budget, but we need the support on Proposition 2, where we can't buy the buses, and then we don't get the aid, and our budgets start to fall apart a little bit at that point. So we've appreciated over the last few years that the community has understood the 2 proposition process, and then we have to ask to first create and then ask to spend, if that was clear at all. If I was rambling again, just stop me.
I think it was very clear.
Any?
I understand it.
No, I'm looking for questions. I mean, this is, it is important. We do have to pass this, so this can go out and be advertised and get out into the public that there is 2 propositions. So if there's no other questions, all in favor? That is everyone. So, Dr. Brown, we're set there, and then we're on to item B, which is really the budget development discussion.
And I have many friends who are going to talk tonight in this conversation. Go ahead, come on up. That's my So as part of the budget development process, we have been talking about our key levers and how this budget is going to support that key work going forward. At the last meeting, we spoke about human capital efforts and how this budget is supporting what we're doing with human capital and development here. Tonight, we want to focus on the teaching and learning framework and professional learning community particularly, and how this budget is supporting those key initiatives. And then we're going to ask Mr. Powers and his high school team to come speak to how this one building-based team went about this process, which we've described as a bit different, giving both principals more flexibility and autonomy to develop their budget. You're going to hear their thought process and what they're thinking about at Ithaca High School as far as their budget going forward. And then finally, we're going to talk about some revised state aid projections at the end and what we're recommending to the board to do with those, I'll say, additional dollars. I like saying additional dollars, so I'm saying additional dollars that we're seeing from the state, what we're proposing to do with them. So the teaching and learning framework, and Ms. Evelyn, would you please introduce your friends, our friends, and what we're...
And I'm excited to have people from the district in the field who are implementing the work. at the building and classroom level with us so that we can have more than just a philosophical discussion about the district initiatives that we've been engaged in over the last 16 months. So I have Yvette DeBoer with me and Wayne Gottlieb representing middle level science who'll talk to us a little bit about their PLC work. And we have Kathy DeLuca with us, 5th grade teacher at Cuda Heights, to talk to us about engagement.
So you want to talk about?
So, sure. Going back to the teaching and learning framework and PLC and the human capital work, this is directly related to the Common Core National Standards Movement. And in that movement, the state has clearly delineated what students should know and be able to do. What they haven't done is talk to us about how we're supposed to get there, right? And so 16 months ago, the superintendent came and rolled out a vision with those 3 key levers that, again, provided the roadmap and really had us enter into a contract for excellence around, again, how we would get there. So the high yield instructional strategies is part of the teaching and learning framework. One of the arenas that we've agreed to agree is part of the roadmap. And when we talk about high yield instructional strategies, we are appreciative of the fact that teaching is an art, but is a more scientific lens to an instructional based approach that we know will provide a boon to student achievement. So those instructional strategies that we're referencing here are the 9 instructional strategies outlined in What Works in Schools by Robert Marzano that we know, again, inclusively provides a boon to student achievement. The higher order thinking skills are related to those strategies, and the one, could you go to the next slide, please? So that they can, these are the 9 instructional strategies that I'm referencing, and it's hard to see, but they include identifying similarities and differences, summarizing and note-taking, reinforcing effort and recognition, homework practice, non-linguistic representation, cooperative learning, and so forth. So these are the strategies that we have focused on in our framework. And some of those strategies can be directly tied with that higher level thinking that we're going after, again, in the framework that we've agreed will ensure that students are meeting those Common Core learning standards. So in order to monitor the implementation of the framework, we have created a walkthrough model, which is what this data is representing through TeachScape, a software product. So the 30 administrators or so are walking through trying to observe these, the implementation of these high-yield instructional strategies. And as we walk through, and this is representative of about 500 walkthroughs, this is what we have observed in terms of the instructional strategies that teachers are engaging in to teach the curriculum. So just to summarize the data, because I don't want to, again, read the slide to you. The top 3 strategies that we're seeing include the reinforcing effort and recognition, the setting objectives, and the using of questions and advanced organizers. These are the most, again, observable instructional strategies that we've seen, and they really do get at students being able to organize and plan their work and personalize their work. The least 3 observable strategies that we've seen include non-linguistic representation, using similarities and differences, metaphors, for example, and generating and testing hypotheses. These are the strategies that are most naturally linked with getting at that higher order thinking that we're talking about, where students are creating, they're synthesizing information, they're hypothesizing, making predictions, and evaluating the content. And so, just as a general summary of this, we've learned that we really do need to promote more professional development around those strategies that we know are going to, again, help students gain access to that higher level thinking. And again, those are the ones that I mentioned.
If I could back up, this process is in addition to the normal APPR process. This is not a formal 1-hour pre-conference observation and then post-conference. We're tasking our administrators to be in classrooms a lot. You see hundreds of walkthroughs here, and in other pieces of data we're looking at, you see hundreds of other walkthroughs. Our administrators are out in classrooms, and more so than ever. And when we think about a budget that's supporting administrators and not cutting administrators, this is what they're doing. And next year it's only going to increase the number of APPR formal observations they're going to need to do. And you'll hear Mr. Powers talk about that later tonight. We know, and I'm presenting to you, this is the trend data, these 5-minute snapshots, plus the conversation around these strategies. This is the kind of data that really shifts practice. Not to say there's anything against the APPR process, but I would like for us to do much more of this work in addition, as opposed to the other. But we're in that quandary right now. How do the budget support administrators doing this work? How does the budget support teachers having the time? Because we're also working with educators, lead educators, to understand this process and to peer observe and look for these same things too. So this budget is supporting that work and something we're going to continue to grow out. I'll just add a bit.
Can I ask you a quick question, Connie? Reinforcing effort and recognition, can you make that, I'm a layman, can you help me understand? What does that mean? Does that mean telling?
Praise, it's offering praise, right? To students.
For correct work, or effort,
for completing the task, to talking about at what level they completed the task, right? And it's important to say that, again, these are just walkthroughs, and so this will create an opportunity to have deeper discussions about reinforcing effort. When are we offering praise? When are we withholding praise, right? What are we offering praise for, et cetera?
That's what I was asking, Seth. Seth is of a mind to think that children who aren't very good at sports should not be rewarded for not being good at sports. So I just was checking to see how it goes down in the classroom.
Does Seth want to respond to that?
We'll settle it later.
Did we mention that Eldred was not at last week's meeting? Okay. All right. Okay, I think we're good, Connie.
Again, engagement is something that we've agreed to focus on, and it is clearly outlined in the teaching and learning framework. When we talk about authentic engagement, in terms of observing that in the classroom, it's important that when we go into the classroom and we're looking for authentic engagement, that we have a conversation with the student about what it is they're learning, what it is that they think the teacher expects them to learn, and why, right? Why are they engaged in that work? And so authentic engagement, when you observe that, and again, it's very important to speak to students about what they're doing in order to be able to effectively engage, gauge the level of engagement. You're going to see students who are personally connected to the work, who are persisting in the face of difficulty, and who can tell you that they find the work meaningful or valuable on a personal level. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that there are 5 levels of engagement that are clearly defined in our framework. And we've seen some authentic engagement, probably about 43% of the walkthroughs that we've done. We see authentic engagement, and we've also seen what we call strategic compliance, which is what we expected. And strategic compliance really speaks to those students who have learned to do school, right? That they are doing the work because of some kind of external motivator, because they expect to get a good grade. They're participating in a specific class, for example, because it might ensure college entrance, or because their parents expect them to do it, or they want to please the teacher. But we know that that kind of compliance does not promote, again, the levels of thinking that we're going after, or the retention of the knowledge that we're trying to have them gain from the experience. And so oftentimes, students won't be able to hold on to that knowledge or apply it in a new context or across disciplines. And so this is the summary of the data, again, that we've seen. We've seen about, again, 43% authentic engagement, maybe 46, 47% strategic compliance, and you can see the other areas represented there.
So those numbers indicate number of walkthroughs?
Walkthroughs, yeah.
And so if I'm looking at the data correctly, you're telling me we go back and forth between folks strategically complying and authentically being engaged. You have almost 50-50 chance, right? Roughly 47% chances of making it. Is that what you're telling? Is that what this data is?
That's what this data is. But we're also getting better at recognizing engagement. And we've had some heated conversations recently about what true engagement is. Some folks on our team think that if every student in the class is doing the same thing, that's not engagement. Where others think if everyone's doing the same thing and they're into the assignment, that is. So what is true, authentic engagement by how we're defining it?
Right.
So some deep conversations. Some folks think you can walk in and see true engagement, while others think you can't see it. You must talk to young people. So this data we'll get better at this.
Sure, and the flip side, of course, that would be the unlikelihood of watching or seeing rebellion while you all are in the room, right? So, in other words, I don't think that there's 2% of our classrooms have an active rebellion at some point in time of engagement, but when other adults come to the room, I imagine that changes the dynamics pretty significantly. So I'm wondering how you are at some point in time going to account for that. Not that we want more rebellion, right? But to be able to sort of get an accurate portrayal of our young folks'
And I've seen districts administer surveys of students about like this. After every class or once a quarter, I've seen many ways of getting at this piece, because it really is about the retreatism. I don't know how you can really observe retreatism unless you talk to a young person and have to report out on what that is. So as we get better at this, which we now have the time embedded in this budget to do that and have deeper conversations about this work.
So the purpose is to sort of engage the process and to give us a baseline.
Yeah.
To begin to figure out how we can identify these things and when and where they're at.
In the conversation, yeah.
We're going to go to Brock, then no.
So these walkthroughs, are they different levels of grades, mostly high school or mostly middle school? Like, is it just completely random? Or
That's a good question, thanks for asking that. This is representative of the walkthroughs from K through 12.
Okay. And do you see any particular trends between honors classes and reading from high school, or are you not tracking that, or are you just going through general walkthroughs?
We're not tracking different levels, and I should correct myself, it is pre-K through 12. We have not disaggregated data to take a look at, again, those different levels.
Thanks, Brock. Albert?
I actually sat in a couple of classes in elementary schools where the teachers, and I'm sure they didn't do this because I was there, they just did it. They actually explained to the children what authentic engagement meant. That they actually read a description. It means this, and you could see the children respond immediately, as if they had either forgotten what it meant, or maybe no one had ever told them what it meant. And I thought that was actually brilliant, because how else will they actually know what the hell it means if anybody doesn't say it to them? This was the 3rd grade. And to Sean's point, I was in the class, the niece was in the class, the teacher was in the class. 3 kids just bailed at some point and completely rebelled. Asked politely if they could leave the room because they were done with the lesson. So my experience in classes is our presence is irrelevant to the children. They're going to behave.
My experience as a teacher is that other folks in the room greatly change the dynamics when I'm teaching. So I understand for you that may be the experience, but as a teacher, it changes the dynamics for a whole bunch of folks. And you may see folks bail out, but I'm also talking about acts of rebellion, where I see folks do other things that aren't nearly as polite.
No one hit me. That was but I mean, there's something so simple. It was just brilliant that she actually explained what it meant.
Good.
What I've experienced, and I imagine other students have experienced it, is that one day in class is very different from the next day in class. So I hope that you do more than just one walkthrough through class and just take that data and put it up, because I think that you might find that some days the lesson isn't interesting, it's something that you have to do, and then students might rebel, or it might just be passive compliance. And then you'll get those numbers, and it can be skewed, because I think that classes change.
Right, and again, this is again to get a general sense of where we are relative to what we're observing around engagement, and to build our practice and decide where we need to focus our work.
We'll go here first, then Seth.
I teach in middle school science, and in my experience, our administrators are pretty stealthy, actually. They come in, and I don't know they're there. And I don't think the kids do either. Sometimes we notice them, sometimes we don't. I know they've come in, and I never knew it. So, just my experience.
Just involved with class and doing what you're doing. Go ahead.
I want to use Leslie's favorite term, inter-rater reliability. And I'm looking at this chart, and I'm actually in rebellion right now. And I'm sure 4 of my other board members are here in retreatism, but throughout the whole study, and yeah, you're
What's the point of me?
But we have 7 instances of retreatism and rebellion, and everybody else is kind of doing their thing. Like, Are we missing something
Part of the
there? Is that-
conversation, Mr. Peacock, I think this authentic engagement is way too high. I was expecting it to come back at around 15% at best, and the retreatism being the highest one we had. Haven't done this for a long time, that's where it should be. This is a tough conversation we're having with leaders right now, who want to be nice, or who are just understanding what true strategic compliance or authentic engagement is. I think much of what we have right now is retreatism.
And what about Leslie's,
Yeah.
thing she's always pushing this?
And that's why we're doing it together. At the elementary level, I know we've had opportunities to go through an individual school together in the classroom. I mean, so we've had 5 or 6 folks walk into a classroom at the same time, just to see the same thing and then have a conversation about what we saw. So that, it's going to take us some time to get that kind of reliability, but it's something we're working on. And I think these numbers are going to shift. You're going to see it, next time we put this up in front of you, it may go down. Don't be alarmed, it's just because we have a better sense of what should be happening.
Go ahead, Pat.
It's just on the numbers, are these individual students within classes, or are you saying a class was engaged and another class was in strategic compliance?
Right, this is representative of how many times we've been in a classroom. So it's not representative of number of students, it's a representative of number of visits.
So you visited something like, oh gosh, now I have to do math on TV. Over 700 classes,
Big red.
and so you're basically snapshot gauging the mood of the class, and not the fact that half the kids might be engaged and the other kids are less engaged, and there's this kid sitting in the corner not doing anything. This is like, so you saw 2 rebellious classes.
Right, so we're not sort of looking at outlier kind of data, we're looking again, like you said, generally at the level of engagement based on the majority of what the students
Okay.
were doing.
And again, as we get better at this, there is no exact science. What we're landing on is, we're going to walk in, we're going to look at 3 particular kids, and we're going to talk to those 3 to get a sense. Versus, and sometimes we've looked at an entire class, but as we get better at this, we're picking individual young people. And I've had administrators say, I'm going to pick the young people I know are typically unengaged or rebelling, like Mr. Peacock. And I'm going to go to Mr. Peacock 3 times this week, and I'm going to ask him where he is. And I want my data to show if he's rebelling or not. And so it's individual school specific and individual leader specific, and using that data to grow as opposed to judging.
I'm going to try to be engaged. Dr. Brown, in the future, how many visits to classrooms are you?
We set a very
envisioning?
aggressive goal this year. We wanted every classroom, every teacher to have at least 3 walks per semester. We found, especially with the new APPR, that was tough. I felt bad for Jared Powell when we put that out there. Because he's just trying to get through his typical observations. And then we're asking him to do thousands of walkthroughs with this administrative team. And even at the elementary level, there are a lot we're asking if we do that. I know of districts who have every teacher as part of this process observed 5 times or more during the semester. As we get better at how we're evaluating, and as we decide that this is what we want to spend our time having a conversation about, we shift. But right now, we set an aggressive target. We didn't meet it, but to see that we have close to 1,000 was something that we'd be proud of also, knowing all the other challenges we have.
But this is a separate exercise than
It's
APPR.
a very separate exercise.
It's a totally different task, and for a total, well,
It's
for-
much more for learning than it is for
Right.
judging, that APPR has turned
Yeah.
into, but we're trying to shift that piece too.
right, exactly.
So I think people have to realize that this data is based on basically 3 kids in a classroom to pick one of.
Not in all sense. I mean, we're getting better at this. Again, we've been working on it all year. So there have been times where we looked at individual kids. Some administrators only look at individuals. Some look at, it's giving you some sense of what we're looking for, but it's not exact. So I want to caution us about saying everyone's doing it the exact same way right now.
So it's just,
that would be an indication of a lack of engagement in the process, quite frankly. That would be people being compliant. If everyone was doing exactly what I said they should do with this process, they were doing what I wanted to do, them to do, as opposed to how it would fit the needs of their individual school or classroom. Can we move on?
Well, no, Seth is going to point
Hold on,
it.
I just want to, since I was in rebellion, I missed it.
Yeah, I know.
These numbers indicate a person goes in with this application and sees rebellion, for example. It could be a rebellion of a particular student, or it could be the whole class rebellion. They hit rebellion in this class and leave quickly. And then when they see
On to the next.
engagement, they may, when they observe that in this classroom visit, they kind of walk in there, see a kid engaged, they hit engagement. Or do they hit engagement, authentic engagement for the whole, their senses, the whole class, or is it just kind of, I go in there, wow, there's engagement going on in this class, even though it's only Louvel engaged, I hit the engagement. I mean, is that kind of what they do, or is it, let me get a whole sense of this class, and that's what these numbers reflect?
I think it's a both and, and again, it's a process that we are growing. One of the most valuable parts of the process is going through with another administrator. I've had a lot of opportunities to do that, and then be able to come out and talk about what we recorded using the app. And it's quite remarkable sometimes how far apart we really can be. But I think, again, the value of having that conversation with your colleague in terms of reaching agreement on what we observe to be authentic engagement.
And what about the teacher? What happens to that conversation with the teacher, that whatever you observe, does that happen at some point?
Sometimes, yes.
We really pushed principals to talk about this at an aggregate level and trend data. This is where our school is right now. Here are some things we need to work on right now. We wanted them to look at student behavior. That was the first step, to look at student behavior versus teacher behavior when we walked in. So as we learn how to do that better, now we're having a conversation about how to use the trend data better, by teacher, by school, as an organization. But with all this data, we can have other meetings for just data conversation. We're just giving you a sense of how we're holding ourselves accountable for the work that we put in a document that's called our framework. It's one thing to have a document put together like that with the fancy words and jargon. It's quite another to hold yourself accountable for the high level of thinking and the level of engagement that we put in there. And this is some sense of how we're doing it.
And I should preface the next slide by saying that I had quite a remarkable experience when I visited Kathy DeLuca's classroom at Cayuga Heights. She happens to be one of the teachers in our district that are piloting the one-to-one initiative. And my experience as a stranger really going into her classroom was that kids would not let me leave. They absolutely did not want me to leave. They wanted to sit and talk with me and explain to me about how they were engaged in their work and how they were using, again, technology to individualize their learning and extend their learning. And so that's why I asked Kathy to come and speak with us about how engagement has transformed.
And they do talk to one another too. I think these principals.
In more than one case, they're sharing with each other.
Yeah.
They're having conversations in the middle slide. They're teaching. That's how they're practicing spelling. That has to be a movie, and then it works for them. My experience with engagement since the iPads arrived after we returned in January. Basically, I had kids who were completely checked out or done. They were done with school. They were, most of the kids I'm talking about in this case are kids who are 1 or 2 grade levels behind, and sometimes more than that. Completely checked out, who now are in. I have them, they're willing to do work. These are kids who typically would be, if we're doing spelling together and I'm working on whatever grade level work is, but you have your workbook and you're cutting out and doing a word sort because you're not there yet. You don't want to do that because you don't want to be outed to all your friends that you can't spell. So you don't. And you're that kid over here in rebellion and retreat or whatever. And my students, frankly, have no problem doing that if you're in the room. You could all be there and still tell you to be done. So, for example, this group here, this table on the bottom, which I was laughing when I saw the slide, every kid is doing a different math practice. So we have a 10-minute window, just hit your facts. So every kid at that table is doing something different. The game or the practice that they like. In this case, I don't see one of the higher level ones, but at the same time that we're doing facts and we're finding the bubbles to make the fact a true statement of multiplication fact, somebody else is doing multi-digit division because they can do that and they're practicing their skill. The kids in this group have Some kids have phonics apps. We're talking about fifth graders who are about to go to middle school, have phonics apps. I have a girl who has an SAT app, who we've decided is going to be on Jeopardy as soon as she can, because she's gonna do this and she's getting the information. So, for me, what I see happening through this process is that my kids are coming to school, some kids are coming to school that didn't come to school, and people are becoming students. All of my kids are becoming students, and I have 1,000 different things to say to you, but I won't do them all. The one-to-one, one of the reasons this works is because I don't have to keep them all in that spot in a box. They're not all at a desk, all doing the same thing all the time, and they don't want to be. They're happy. What's happening right now in my classroom without me doing a lot of extra work is differentiation is happening.
Sure.
Every kid is getting what they need. You would be happy because you would be able to do whatever you would like, Mr. Peak. This person here, from what I've seen, would also be doing what he wanted to do, but you would in the end have the same goal. My students are given an essential question. This is the big picture, this is where we need to be. But you, Judy would be out in the hallway doing a video, she's making an iMovie. You're doing a project in Pages and you're bringing pictures in to complete it. Whatever your method of work is what you're able to do, and wherever you are. So if you're that kid who really struggles with all of the pieces, you can put it in quick voice and then tell me your story. You don't have to write a thing. Now, do we then take it and write from it? Yes, we do. So it gives them that piece and helps lift them up. So I guess, I don't know what else to say, 1,000 different things. But I would say students become more engaged at the mention of technology as a learning tool. They're already in a little bit, even if they don't like it. My SAT student isn't sure it's a good thing, but she's the one standing in front of me every day saying, did you know? Nope. What else are you going to teach me? When I guess the thing to keep in mind is I am learning more every day, and I went into this knowing very little. I knew I was willing to do it. They're teaching me something every day, and I can't wait to see what happens.
I actually just want to tie something together. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being willing to be our pilot, if not an experiment. A little arm twisting. Andrew, not putting you on the spot, but again, the question you asked a couple of weeks ago was it was the question. There's all this stuff we're talking about lowering, hypothetically flattening things out and lowering the bar, right?
The word I didn't use is, I think, in my room, in this situation, not in my school, because I'm the only one, it's an equalizer. Because it's all in the same place when we walk in the door. So.
But the flip side of it, being an equalizer, is, I think, the critical thing you mentioned, that every student is actually learning. Right? They're learning in a style and in a way, not necessarily at a pace, that is returning students to you. And we want to make that clear, that this is not about reducing expectations. Again, in any class you give me, I'm going to pick out the heterogeneous nature and tell you which students are really engaged and not. Anything we can do to bring that bar up for all kids, we have to explore it. This is fantastic.
I'd be happy to share all of my stories, but I have other things to do.
It's great.
Go ahead, Chuck. So I want to play Senecare for a quick second. This is great, right? My nieces came home and they saw this fancy iPad, and for 4 weeks she was walking around showing me how she can read words. And then after the 4th week, it's kind of like, the iPad. So do we think we're going to have some technology fatigue? And if the iPad is a tool for engagement but not the engagement, then how do we as teachers and educators make sure our young folks stay engaged when the iPad no longer is as novel as it appears to be for our young folks right now?
And can I say, now more than ever, the master educator is important. Kathy was doing this work in September, and we introduced this emerging piece of technology, and it took off. She's going to differentiate, she's going to engage young people no matter what's at her disposal. Now she's able to do it in different and more efficient ways. So the iPad is going to be a different iPad next year. It's going to be another mobile device the year after that. It's going to be a tool that's going to be different year to year. We know that. But the master educators are what's hard to come by. So our framework doesn't even speak to technology tools right now. It will. It speaks to how your instructional strategies, which can be used with these tools or not. And it speaks to engagement and how levels of thinking. As we understand that work to a deep level, these tools will be able to be used effectively. Again, I've been in places where we've done one-to-one initiatives for everyone without having that framework conversation, and people will run out of town because of it. Here, we're building we're building capacity around the work, and we're implementing and we're using these tools to enhance it. Again, seeing your classroom in September and then seeing it now. What's different is just the level of engagement for the most part, and now you're more efficient. You flipped it in ways. You're probably doing. Young people are answering questions themselves more so than having to go to you for the answer. I'm seeing things that you wanted to do all along. You just didn't have the tools to do.
Two things I would add is that all of us, I think, in the pilot program are just getting started. We're just finding the potential. I right now am really meeting the needs of my less able students. We're beginning the process. The higher kids are finding ways, and we're working on ways to do that. The other thing is, gone.
Well, I'll still follow up, and maybe we'll come back. That happens to me every day, so all the time. Two quick follow-up questions, and one again, thank you, because I've been waiting to see what this looks like in practice. Right, it's a great thing to have, and I plan on it. Two questions I'd like to see if you could answer. One, what has excited you the most now that you've done it for a little bit, or what continues to excite you the most?
That's actually the answer to what I lost.
Fantastic. And then what is an unintended consequence that we didn't anticipate prior to this, but now having watched it play out, that we may know a little bit better, or does that make sense? I think I'll think of unintended things that take place.
I think it makes sense, and I'd have to think about the second one just a little bit. The first one, I think the most exciting piece for me, and it was something I didn't realize would happen, is that when I started this, I was a little overwhelmed by the thought of what it might entail for me. The most exciting thing is that while maintaining control of my classroom, I can say, I don't know how to do that. Figure it out. Come teach me. So I don't have to know all of the pieces because they already know it. I mean, if you hand any child this big and bigger your phone and say, will you find how to do, they hand it back to you. So I guess for me, learning while they're learning was a good piece. I don't feel as overwhelmed because I realize right away they're going to know it more than I do. I think another piece that was really exciting for me, and it's something that I've realized more and more as we've come into the process, is that I get to more kids. I get to have more conversations. I get to look at more work. I have students who are very happy to email every piece of work that they do, which is this weird thing. My family's like, who is that? As it rings it, my iPad tells me somebody new has sent me an email. They're writing freely. They write more, and I get to talk to kids. I get to actually have time to talk to kids. I'm doing less of dealing with strategic compliance, I guess, the people that are just producing for no reason.
So if I could jump in here one more time. To do this work well is also a community conversation, and thanks to the support and the innovation of IPEI, we're able to do this. We have 11 classrooms throughout the district at the elementary level with 5th grade on up through high school. Because of the fundraising efforts of IPEI, quite frankly, we're able to do that. It took us some time to figure out how to do a distribution model and how to do a replacement cycle and how to organize that within our existing financial structure around technology. While working on doing that piece, IPEI came to the table and said, we'll help you get this off the ground, because they knew it was a passion of mine and some key teachers in the organization. So they've been doing the fundraising efforts and working behind the scenes to make this happen while we've been doing this we've been playing around. So going forward, this budget, while we haven't asked for new dollars and technologies, we're figuring out how to use our existing dollars. We're going to do more of these one-to-ones. We're also looking to partner with the community, because I think the community is learning how we're using these tools in ways. So again, thank you, IPEI, because this wouldn't have happened had they not come to say, how can we support your work? And we gave them some ways to do it, and they actually deliver. I keep saying, they keep coming to me with checks instead of asking us to pay them. How does that work, man? This is what's happening because
Foundations are
well, I'm figuring it out.
Typically, 5th grade at Cuba Heights is a fairly large class.
I have 26 students.
Or I just wanted to get that number out.
Yes, I have 26 students, and I know there's another one in the district that has almost as many, 2 classrooms total. So yes, I have 26 students. My colleague has 25, they have big classes.
Exactly. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
I'm curious, and maybe it'll help to put some context to this, that you didn't have the iPads until the beginning of this year, apparently. So what was it what did one-on-one mean, or what was that about before the iPads came?
One-on-one, like conversation with students one-on-one?
No, I mean, what was is it differentiated?
Yeah, what did differentiation look like before the iPad?
Yeah. Well, is that what the focus of the one-to-one program? Is the one-to-one a program? Is that
No, one-to-one just means
One,
device
okay.
to every student. One device per student.
So were you teaching? So what in the first half of the year were you just teaching traditionally, or were you doing something different?
I don't do a lot of traditional teaching to start with, and Lynn's laughing because that's one of the reasons that I think this was an easy transition for me. We do a lot of small group work, and that's what I did prior to this, and a lot of really looking at what this did was change the amount of work that I have to do to make it that differentiated, because the range literally is somebody who's never been in school before this year to kids that are way off the charts on the other end. So for me, it changed like the minute by minute differentiating, but it was, small groups and as individualized as I could do with 26 students.
And hands-on, you did a lot of hands-on stuff that you
And one last, very specifically, how much time as a percentage do they spend with the iPod during the day, roughly?
It's very rarely in the cart. They have it at their access,
Their access, but
How much time do they?
use it, on it, going.
More than 50%? I mean, I would have to look at that carefully, but most of the day, they're using it for some piece of their work. Today, there was a tiny little moment when we couldn't use them, and that was right in the middle of poetry, and we were thinking we were going to have to go to paper and pencil, and it was kind of a tragic.
So let's think about that number 50%, because there's research out there that says that at the elementary level, young people are reading about 5 or 10% of the time.
Yeah.
So if you're saying 50% of the time they're interacting with the device on an assignment that's differentiated, we increase the amount of time they're actually reading text in some sense, or engaged. But I'll put some articles in your Dropbox that speaks to how much time students are actually doing work or reading versus what you just said and you're seeing in your classroom.
The flip side of that, though, is that the flip side of that research is that, and while students are engaged in these devices, they're not engaged in the world, right? So in other words, the social interaction gets lost because they're here. So I'm wondering, have you noticed that? I know it doesn't have to be that way, right? But I'm noticing if you notice a difference in the social interactions between your students.
The way I teach, many of our conversations before we move out to lessons is, so I'll ask a question, they're all like, no, you're not talking to me, talk to your neighbor, let's have a conversation. And there's some very, very important time that they're required to speak to each other, and there's a lot of conversation about appropriate social behavior, which doesn't include electronic devices.
Yeah, we get that on the board all the time. Pat, did you add something?
No, I wanted to make a comment that I appreciate the holistic context in which this is being set out. I mean, you put the picture up there, and I wanted to laugh because it looks like my living room at night. I'm on my computer, and our daughter's on her computer, my husband's on his computer, and sometimes we talk to each other. But it's a cohesive group. But so you can say engagement, and you're measuring engagement, but engagement in what? What is the quality of engagement? What is the quality of instruction? And that's where I appreciate the previous slide that was up there, looking at the 9 levels of engagement, and you're measuring instructional strategies like, praise, right? Praise is nice, but it's not at the same higher level of thinking as creating hypotheses, and that was very low. And the fact that you're paying attention to that and looking to increase the higher level, you have to get the engagement first. The devices are creating the engagement or aiding the engagement, but it's not going to stop there. You're not going to say, oh, look how happy they are, they're engaged. You're going to push it to the next level, and I appreciate that very much.
I should say that 60 to 70% of the work that the students in Kathy's classroom shared with me really did speak to their effort around collaborating and creating, because they weren't presenting their work to me individually. They were coming in pairs and triplets, right, around the work, the project-based work that they had completed, and how proud they were of their individual efforts to complete that work.
Chris?
The kids who struggle, what does that look like, and what does the level of engagement look like? Do they retreat, or are they, hiding behind this tool?
With, more specific question.
Well, you have your Jeopardy student who's showing you all this stuff, but I can engage with this and I can be engrossed in this, but I'm still not getting my words together, or my math, and so how is that? What's that process looking like?
So I would say one of the students, I think that Connie actually had a chance to talk with. This is a young lady who came in who had zero confidence. So when she started in the classroom, head down, crying every time we took out a piece of paper, I can't do it. What's happened is her confidence has increased. That was slowly increasing, but what happened for her, even now, she's made progress to the point where her progress is we're doing learning A to Z, so reading online, answering questions. The books now, she's attempting to go back to that place where it's too hard, I can't do it. Her problem is there were too many words on the page now. But let's take a look at this. She can read every word on the page now. So this is different. You have to stop and look at it. So are those behaviors still there? Yes. How does she function now? She wants to go there, but then she goes back to the I'm doing everything everyone else is doing. I'm still at a lower level. But no one knows that, and I am making progress. She's actually making progress. Has she made a year and a half in 6 months now? Is she moving forward? Absolutely. Who she is right now, pictures I had, this girl or this girl is now.
So the fact that they don't have to broadcast their
No.
weakness, or
Everybody's doing something, sort of. But
Yes.
everyone has, one girl's reading War of the World, and this child's reading on and answering questions. So I think it makes a difference.
You, if I heard you correctly, it sounded like you said briefly that taking the kids who are at the higher level and actually using the device to actually just push them up by an exponent is not really come yet.
That I'm not there yet.
Okay. And
We
what are the
scratching the
challenges
surface.
with that? Could you help us understand what are some of the barriers?
That's a student who feels like everyone should have them. She's everyone. And that then she would have more people to talk to about what she can do. So that's the kind of student we have. I think there are a lot of places for us to go with that, and more time spent in that group of people that are doing this will help me figure that out. I don't have an answer. The biggest problem with that is that, for me, her needs aren't being met in the same way that other kids are. But she still is that traditional student who is working hard, and she's more strategically compliant and authentically engaged.
So, again, this is professional learning communities, again, is part of our commitment to moving the work forward, and we are learning and growing together. And it is a structure for us to legally and collaboratively take a look at student data and how it informs, again, student learning, and what we need to do as educators to work together to promote student learning. Again, early after Dr. Brown arrived, the middle level science folks asked me to support their ability to continue meeting as a PLC outside of the school day and during the school day to extend their work so that they could better understand what it would mean for them, because they are not an area of accountability right now relative to the state guidelines, but they recognize the work as an important piece of how they could grow as professionals. So I would ask that Yvette and Wayne talk about their experiences around evolving as a PLC.
Go for it.
Like the picture, that's good.
Yeah, each presentation's in it.
Yeah, good. So anyway, I'll speak a little bit to the variety of questions here, and I'm going to try and make it brief. And certainly if there are questions afterwards, I'll be happy to answer them. So the who is that we began, I would say we sort of applied for summer funding back in spring of 2011. It was myself and Wayne and the two 7th grade science teachers at Boynton. And we really wanted to get together over the summer to start sort of mapping out the curriculum that we've honestly been teaching for years. It's the New York State Science Core Curriculum, but we felt that we're sort of dabbling and doing what we need to do in it, but we also like doing different things outside of it, and it wasn't very cohesive. And we felt that if we got together as a team and really talked about what is the true core, and what order are we going to teach it, what's the timing going to be, what do kids really need to know based on just the New York State standards, we felt that we could better align ourselves. We felt that ultimately the students would have a better opportunity to learn information, to be successful on the exam. And so I guess I'm getting into the why a little bit now as well. And that ultimately would also give us an opportunity. The New York State test, I think, is a good one in the sense that it does test a fair amount of science. It gets a little bit of high order thinking skills, a little bit of inquiry-based learning, but we felt that we wanted to have, well, one of the things that we discovered is that outside, so once we had the core curriculum sort of set, that we had a lot of more extra time than we thought to sort of teach more inquiry-based learning and more project-based learning. So it's been a very exciting time for us. And again, I'm jumping around a little bit now, but so we have met now, thank you, we met over the course of last summer, and then thanks to Connie, she supported us. We've met 3 other times this year. We have pretty much finished mapping out the entire year for science. We've come up with content maps that get at major understandings, essential questions, skills, and vocabulary. We've developed a number of common assessments that we've administered. It's a little bit different from sort of a quarterly assessment. We found it was easier and probably made more sense to have a common assessment after each unit. The very last common assessment, we used SchoolNet, put that on SchoolNet for the first time, and we're excited about the possibility of being able to administer that test through SchoolNet. I don't know, does everybody know what SchoolNet is? Okay. Administer that through SchoolNet before the end of the year, at least pilot it a little bit. So in terms of future work, we're really hoping to continue this work, and we'd really like to take it to a new level and look at not just doing an analysis of the common assessments, but sort of figuring out, okay, this is what they really need to know based on the state, but what more can we do in science? There's so much more to science than just learning information. There's so much about the process that isn't really taught, and we feel very strongly that that's an important component that really is applicable for 21st century learners. That's what they really need to know in science, is not what is the information, but how do you get there, and how have we gotten there up until now. I don't know if you would like to add anything.
Well, I would just like to add that in going over the state tests, initially we thought a lot about the content, and I have to say I was a little annoyed at all the content that's on there, because I think that science skills are at least as important or more important. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized that there was a lot of critical thinking in the questions that they put together. And the questions, not all of them had to be looked at just in terms of the content, but in terms of the critical thinking that was required for each of those tests. So I earned a little bit more respect for the state test.
And I think the other piece of this work that was maybe, I wouldn't say a bit of a surprise to us, but that it really brought us together as a team. I think it wasn't, at times I've sat together with teachers, oh, I really like this activity, oh, I really tried that, and it almost becomes this competitive, like, oh, well, this one works really well. It wasn't like that at all. It was more, we just really put our heads together and thought about what is it that we need to do. And it wasn't so much how are we going to do it, it's just what do we need to do. And it really, I think it brought us all together in a way that we haven't had the opportunity to, since I've been teaching in the district.
it became an opportunity for us to really discuss our different philosophies and to understand the different philosophies of all the other teachers in the department, and made you really think in different ways about how you teach. But also, I hope that my point of view was understood by the other teachers, and I think that's important.
Okay. And I think the other thing, it's sort of catching on. I also teach 6th grade science at DeWitt, and so I've started 6th grade initiatives similarly, and it was kind of the same thing where some teachers were in and some teachers were in. But after the second time, everybody was in, and we were all excited about it. Wow, this is great, we should do this again. And so I think it's really, it's working very effectively in that sense.
What about 8?
Sorry?
What happened to 8?
I'm a little less plugged into 8th grade, but I would say that it's also happening in 8th grade for both earth science and physical science. I mean, we've done as much work, but they have plans this summer to get together. Yeah.
Good, Jay.
In terms of cohesiveness across the different, with the different teachers, if a child were to leave one teacher in the middle of the year and go to another, how cohesive do you think you're going to, I think you're not done yet, but when you are done, how aligned will it all be among the teachers?
It's fairly well, I mean, the goal with the 7th grade, and Wayne's smiling, I don't know that we accomplished it, but was to have everything fairly well aligned. So if our student, for example, was at DeWitt and moved to Boynton, that they would sort of pick up where they left off.
We're much better aligned now than we have been.
Yes, that is true. And I think that we have, we can work more towards that. There were different reasons. Boynton, I think, is ahead of us, and there's different reasons for that, but I think that at least we have a general framework, and I think as time moves on, we can fit that better.
One of the school net, will that be the first instance of an exam being given on our school net?
No, it won't be. We've done some other assessments there. I think you guys are looking to do it online, correct?
We'd like to do it online, yeah.
And they'll be the first online administration. We have much data there already, so folks are looking at data from other assessments, but the actual administration online will be first here.
For the folks at home in the Ithaca Journal that watches this and reports out, just explain what SchoolNet is.
Yeah. It's an instructional management system, and we're calling it the teaching and learning portal. We have our curriculum documents are going to be housed there. Our assessment items, which we can build assessments from, will be housed there. Benchmark quarterly district level assessments will be housed there and administered there. So it's our one-stop shop for everything, including a collaborative workspace as we roll it out as well. So we'll be able to have colleagues from across the district be able to communicate inside of this secured wall about an assessment or about curriculum. As we put curriculum documents there that are of high quality, educators will be able to rank them. I like that one, or I've used it this many times and here's some feedback on it. So it's a secure digital space for all things that are teaching and learning framework like, if that makes sense.
What did you call it, a what portal?
The teaching and learning portal is what we're branding it as, and we keep referring. I'm anti-calling a piece of technology by its vendor name. Right. When you call it by that, it oftentimes doesn't have much meaning. You're in a compliance mode. When you start to refer to it how it's being used as you're using it, but as a teaching and learning portal, as a one-stop shop for all of us, it makes so whenever I hear SchoolNet, I screech a little bit, but I get why people call it that because it's branded all over the actual tool, but we're calling it.
Just to follow, so do you hope to do that assessment this year, or is that next year, that first time?
I'd like to do it this year. I don't know if we'll be set up to do it, but
we should be fine this year.
And as a practical matter, would they go to the computer lab, you think, to take the exam?
I think most likely. At this point, I don't have a one-to-one classroom, so that's, yes.
But there's no reason why that couldn't work either, right, to go to the computer lab, to sign up and,
yeah.
And something to be thinking about, I think it's 2014, the state, we're going to be administering park assessments, which are being built on a digital platform. And as an organization, I think we're ahead of many when we're building our infrastructure to support online testing. And coming from a state that did only online testing, it takes a significant infrastructure to do that we're hoping to build out over the next 2 years. And this portal is one way to get young people understanding how to take an online assessment, for us to have the technology and infrastructure to even do that. So it's something we're building on, as opposed to just waiting for it.
So Connie always tells me that consistency standing alone and consistency across, classroom, across school, district, teacher to teacher, that alone has positive outcomes on student achievement. Can you explain kind of on the ground what that looks like, how you've seen the idea of consistent curriculum, timing, approaches? How does that actually help, kids across your school, in different rooms at different times? I mean, what's actually happening when we have a certain level of consistency? What does that do to your job as a teacher that makes you more effective and thereby affects student achievement? I mean, have you identified that? Do you have a sense of what's that?
I'm not sure if I know how to go about answering your question. I think that it's certainly, as teachers, it's nice to have a consistency about exactly what it is that students, at least according to state, need to know for the exam. Because then we can turn around and, so I've developed my units in such a way that I tell students, I said, these are the objectives, this is what you need to know. I build a word wall, and I've sent that word wall to other teachers where they put the words up and we, can look at them together, so that, to me, with consistency, and this is the next step that I think will come, is that we can also start talking about activities. Well, what do you do to teach this, and how do you go about doing that? So that, I think we all get better, and that we incorporate more of those instructional strategies as well. That
So
are
the dialogue is the same dialogue that you're having, you can exchange ideas about.
I think that's one of the powers of it. You have, you have 4 teachers discussing what's really important. And so you have sort of the best of those 4, or at least the consensus of those 4, coming to agreement about what's important about what to teach. I think the debate also inspires a lot of higher thinking into what it takes to be a good teacher.
But you could have the same debate when you're not consistent. But
so the consistency you're talking about is the consistency of teaching the same thing at the same time? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I heard you talk about before, that we've tried not only to get the curriculum in line with the core, but also the timing down.
Right.
In September, we're going to be doing plant life or whatever the subject is, and somehow I'm told by Connie that's a benefit in some way. I'm trying to figure out what the actual mechanism, how does it work? Is it just a same language that allows teachers then to have a better conversation, more focused conversation on the work and the implementation and things like that?
So, can I take a shot at it?
Yes.
It's hard to have a conversation about data unless you have common data. So as they come together, the PLC team, to have a conversation about the common assessment data, it's based on the same content. So as they challenge one another about what did you teach at these scores, or what did you do well to get those scores, or
So
not
it's that
do well.
simple.
Yeah, it really is to have a conversation about
more.
data. Yeah. And that's what, and I'm hoping that's what you're saying, having that time. You couldn't have a common assessment conversation about data without teaching at the same time.
Right.
It would be very difficult to have that.
And make real-time intervention, to do interventions like they should be done, or to differentiate, or to switch students at the elementary level to reorganize students based on their needs. It couldn't happen unless you were teaching things at the same time.
I think some of the things that I heard too, just to sort of bring home, was that having common content and being able to discuss that together at the same time has also, I think, elevated the conversation to identifying what are the enduring understandings, right? What's the conceptual learning that we want students to gain from having a common time frame around delivering content? What are the critical thinking skills that we want students to master so that they can apply this knowledge across disciplines? I heard you folks talk about that. And I also heard you identify, again, what are those essential skills, science skills, that kids need to have in order to be successful, right? At the next grade level, vertically, and again, to prepare them for high school and college and career. So I think those discussions are happening even though you may not be specifically identifying them. Those are critical benefits to having, the same expectations for all students across the board.
So we'll transition. Thank you for coming. We have
Hey, can I just say one thing about this? We've heard from teachers, and it didn't happen tonight, but I want to encourage the next group of presenters, if it's the same group or the next time, is to actually teach the board what's happening by giving a presentation that actually is engaging and allows us to use this thing that we all have in front of us in a way that is different than basically the same kind of, I mean, that would be really, so if educators listening out there, or if you guys come back, you know, it might really help us better understand to be taught in the way, because right now we're kind of in PowerPoint mode and we know that, but it would really be great if we could
We're a little ritualistic.
You wanna do some
compliant.
work?
That's what he said.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know,
Some of us are
it.
retreating.
Yeah, I would love if someone, you know, a teacher came and said, I do this, and you know what, look this up, you know, it would make
Honestly,
us
that would be easier than talking.
do something.
Yeah.
That would be way easier than
Then I'd have to pretend to use it.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. It was great. Dr. Brown, I'm gonna take a quick break as we switch gears. Can we do that?
We'll come back with
Television or streaming.
How long is it?
Either television or streaming.
Well, it's throughout the week.
You on our Enriching the Day Generates Excellence program, which is also supported in this budget that we're proposing. As you know, our dream includes the day when every secondary student walks into a guidance office or into the principal's office, and when walking in to look at course work during the regular academic day, they also sign up for things before and after school that are enriching opportunities as well. We've completed what we are calling a project charter for this particular initiative/project that outlines our goals, and we put this in your Dropbox also.
Right.
That outlines our goals for the program, which speak to what we want our young people to be doing before and after school. Maximizing the utilization of the new facilities, the Performing Arts Center and the Health and Wellness Center, and on and on. So we have the goals outlined in the project charter, the timeline and when we wish to implement certain things, who's going to be point person for the implementation, and then some cost estimates as far as how much it will cost us to do this particular program. You'll also see that the offerings that we're proposing run across these threads. We have a media program, a music program, an intramural program, an academic and social building thread, dance and music. Yes, we're hoping to really take off with this work next year, but just so you know, much is happening right now. We're using the facilities. You'll see now the dance studio. And one of the goals for this program is to go after students who are not traditionally involved with these enriching opportunities. I think you're going to see right there some non-traditional students dancing right there. with the world-class dancers. We're also going after, one of the goals for this program is to include the community as part of the actual instruction. And we're working through what that looks like. You see a world-class educator of ground dance, educating young people. Mr. Dunn's taking a video of the iPad here. And they're excited. That club is happening 2 or 3 days a week now, Mr. Dunn? Twice a week. You'll see the academic support that's happening, / homework club that's happening. I think those are shot from the Wick Middle School.
That's great.
You'll see the Edge basketball team right there, and the young men who we've wanted to be a part of an after school or an enriching opportunity. I'm so happy. Just when I got that picture, it made me, it brought joy in my heart to see some of the individuals there who are doing something after school now. And they have that nice
before school.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, before school. So these gentlemen are getting up at 7 a.m. It starts at 7 a.m. or 7:30 a.m.
Dr. Brown, do you mean there's actually an intramural basketball
Yes,
program?
we have an intramural basketball program, and those are the jerseys to prove it. They're Edge jerseys.
Can we just pause and let Rob let that settle in for a minute?
We have an intramural basketball program.
Brad too.
And some other intramural sports as well.
Back to the future, I guess. Go ahead.
You see the media program, you see our interactive, our new multi-purpose room that's online now, and young people doing dance revolution, which we have some champion in our midst also. You see our edge dancers, those young ladies have been practicing as part of this program. They've actually performed at some basketball events and other events. And you'll see a poetry slam of sorts. We had someone come from Ithaca College and work with a group of young people after school around poetry and doing something that I can't do at all. So again, just some examples of things that are happening now. This program we know will take off in the next year and coming up in the next year. We had the community-wide summit in which we brought some of the best thinkers in the community around music, education, co-curricular offerings, and we talked about what's possible. And what would your wildest dream look like as far as a co-curricular enriching opportunity for young people in this community? And much of what you see in the charter and what you'll see in the coming years is going to come out of that conversation about what's possible. So that's a soundbite about what we're doing. Mr. Nunn, would you add anything here?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that what you're seeing at the surface, there's far more taking place. For example, in the dance studio, the kids aren't simply just dancing. They're actually learning, maybe many of you have seen the human relations education lesson that's attached to that with the song Colors. So it's far more than getting a group of students in a room to dance. It's an actual human relations exercise on skin color, because we're still tripping on skin color, and unfortunately, we still need to be educated on that. So Dr. Nia is not only dancing with the kids, but there's a human relations component involved. And as it relates to the basketball program, we've been able to get kids up early in the morning, but we're focusing on skills and drills in addition to statistics. So it's more than just basketball. So at the surface, you see these things, but there are actual educational components intertwined.
And I was just foreshadow, we're very excited about the media component as well. We see a day in the near future where we'll have an ICSD TV station. Yes, we have some aspects of it, but we're looking to partner with our local cable provider to have one of these educational channels be us. And we have enough video vignettes now to provide 24 hours of coverage of what's happening in our school district, led by young people. So we can have our own news program, we can have little Oprah-like shows where they're interviewing us, one another. So whenever you turn on the TV, I'm hoping you turn on the channel, whichever it's going to be, and you see something that's ICSD TV, that's student-led. But we're in negotiations right now, and we're hoping that, because I'm understanding through text messages and emails that we're not on TV tonight. Those kind of things shouldn't happen for us. We should be on TV all the time to help share the work that's happening in the organization. So we're going to work on that. And we see this program being in place where students can be involved with that as well.
I see the Edge men's basketball.
Yeah, we're working on that.
We've opened the door to everyone.
But I think we need to push harder.
Yes, we do.
That's part of our Health and Wellness Initiative, stressing wellness.
Yeah.
Right, and Dr. Brown, I guess we could expand on the vision thing a little bit. Well, we've talked about this for quite a while, but basically if you're a jock, you should be involved in something that is going on in the Performing Arts Center. If you go through Ithaca High School and you do not participate in something, in that other building, then you probably missed out, on that high school experience, and the converse is true as well. If you're just a band guy, but you're not taking advantage of the other programs that are going to be available, are available, then well, we're not quite doing everything that we should be doing. We've talked about this, Dr. So it's really, and it is the vision of, when you do go see your school counselor in 8th grade, and the question will be asked, well, here are your classes, what else? And the expectation will be on the school counselors and middle school is preparing you to take advantage of everything that is available at the high school. Take advantage of what we offer here, because far too many kids are not taking advantage of everything that is there, just waiting to be used. That's what it's there for. Go ahead, Brett.
So you've got the basketball, I understand, before school. Have you got any
before school and after school?
And after. Have you got other things starting now before school as well, or I know you're just getting underway with this.
So far we've been fortunate, particularly with the basketball before school.
And you're going to have another gym available to you within days.
And I think that's going to attract more students.
And I guess that was part of saying before school, after school. What about the lunch hour? I mean, might we be able to have some
Well,
of
it's
this
interesting
available?
that you pointed that out. Many students come to my office asking if I'll cover them or looking for someone else
Great.
who's also AED certified to cover them so that they can recreate themselves before returning to class, if you will.
I understand, that's great. And I want to, I mean, obviously I want to encourage before, after, during the
And
lunch
during.
hour, yeah, or open period. I mean, I realize we're going to be scheduling the spaces as well.
We'll have enough space.
See that?
That's for sure.
That's
Right,
great.
that was, right, and that's the point. That was,
Yep.
because of the generosity of the community, we've been finally able to build more space, to be able to offer more, do more. And so there was never, well, there was always classes, you can never use it after school. If the gym in the winter, well, it was stacked up with practices, frankly, after school and all night. So there was no opportunities to have
And we all
other
found,
sports.
and I know Mr. Collins is going to speak to this later, with this additional space, there is a need for additional staff to cover these spaces.
Understand.
For safety issues and just to have the kind of programming that you're seeing behind us going on. So we're going to talk more about that and may come to the board with a request also, but we're going to need to think about how we staff this significant amount of new space at the school.
And I just wanted to point out, all of these wonderful things are happening in the experimental stage. I mean, we haven't really propelled them in the way that we actually are planning to, or we will eventually.
And again, it's outlined in the plan how we let it grow.
I can't, Eldred in his hair, I can't see by any, it's tough, I can't see anyone. Go ahead, Chip.
So why, this is fantastic. This is great. This is really exciting stuff. And so how come we're trying to, why a charter and all this other stuff instead of just doing it? What are we trying to accomplish? And there's good stuff in the charter too. It's very, I like the plan, and I like the things in the charter, and there's goals and all that. And is that the reason why there's a, I don't know.
Yes, and experiences have shown me that this is how you get stuff done. To have it documented, to hold ourselves accountable, to have points of contact to get things done. As superintendent, quite frankly, I need to know who to speak to about the media program, who's working on media now, or who's point person for the budget. I'm able to now, through this charter and having your names here, go to Mr. Nunn or Dr. Myers or Mr. Van Kuren for a particular question. Budgets. I've seen budgets spiral out of control if you haven't budgeted for it up front. So everything that we're speaking about doing now, we've thought about how much it's going to cost us, and we've embedded that in the charter. And then goals. I mean, we're very clear about what we're looking to get out of this, how we're going to measure its success. As we roll out an instructional coaching model, we're going to do that as a charter also. We talked last week, we talked about instructional coaching. How we're going to measure whether or not it's successful or not. We should have SMART goals in place before we go into it, saying whether or not it's successful. These charters have that. They have the goals, the achievement increases that we look to have after implementing. So a lot of specific information will be embedded here to show that we thought through it very carefully, and we want it to happen in a finite amount of time, if that makes sense.
Go ahead.
Great, that's good too.
I'd say it much simpler. As Brad reminds us all the time, it ain't my money. I want to be conscious that we don't fall prey to good stories just because this activity happens to be something that I'm fully behind. I don't want you to come in with good stories. Right? We want data. I'm going to ask the same questions that we ask Ed Redmond, that we ask you. How does this connect to the improvement in the life of one child? And if you can't prove it, you're not going to be able to justify it. So thank God I'm glad he put that together. I'm glad he's going to put that together for the other programs.
So an example of one of the SMART goals is we want to have at least 200 middle and high school students participate next year. So we'll be able to, at this time next year, we'll come back to you and share where we are with our goal. We want to have, of the students who participate, 95% attendance rate. I know the school-wide goal at Ithaca High School is get to 95% rate. If we can show that the young people participating here are all in school 95% or more of the time, we may be coming back to you for additional dollars to grow this. I mean, so there are ways, and you'll see 5 or 6 other achievement-related SMART goals that we have in place to gauge whether or not this was successful or not in next year.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So in the other concept that you've brought to the district is this continuous improvement. And so you got this charter, and I think the tendency might be, okay, here not to do continuous. So is there, maybe I only look quickly, but is is it, let's see, is there a date, how would you address continuous improvement?
It's all part of the same process. So one of the goals we're putting out there as part of this continuous improvement process is to increase engagement. Under engagement, we have attendance as one of those indicators. So we're looking at 95% attendance rates across the district. That would be a key indicator for engagement, which also ties into goal priority number 1 around high expectation for all students. So it triples down like that. So then we get to strategy for increasing engagement. A co-curricular enrichment program will do that. And we have that same strategy and metric embedded in this project. Now I can go through other places here too that shows how they're directly correlated up to the priorities at the district level. And so it all is connected. And every new initiative, one of the goals around resources that we're going to put in front of the community is every new initiative is going to go through a project charter type of a format so that we can say we're using resources effectively and that they're also tied to board of education priorities and to achievement.
When's the date, is there a date, a time, a method to review this particular charter?
Yeah, and that's we have a project management oversight committee, and right now on that committee is the executive team. So we meet monthly to look at project charters that we have. So other charters we have is PDI Institute, the Summers Institute. So we have the deliverables, the timelines, and all those things. So when together as a team, the project manager comes in, and for this particular project, it's Mr. Nunn. For the summer work, it's going to be Miss Evelyn. So that the project manager comes in and presents their case of sorts. This is where we are. And quite frankly, the questions I asked are we on schedule or not? Are we under budget or over budget? And from there, we get into a lot of other conversations. And that's all I want to hear at that point. And then the project manager is tasked, and Mr. Nunn has had some of these tough conversations via text message on weekends and other places, because we need to have this thing done and ready. And so he was working on the grind, for lack of better words, to get things done for me so that we can present it to you. So that's how it's working. It's a way for me and our team to hold folks accountable. We meet often to monitor the progress on these charters.
Right, so.
Hey, looking at this, I don't see any, well, in the responsible person category or in any of the description, any initiatives by students, right? So I don't see the student run, early morning intramurals. What about the student governance part of it? When is a group of students going to come and say, we want X at this time, and we're going to elect our officers, and yes, we need a certified person there, but we want to do this activity with our particular group, and run it and actually have governance over that activity. How are we going to establish things like that, where students are coming in and saying, we like this type of dance, we want to do this particular program, we want to have a poetry reading, we want to, how do we, a movie night, how do we, a comic book, how do we allow students to bring those things in so that they're running and producing events that they're interested in? What's the plan for that?
Those initiatives are opened up through the student activities, but to speak to that directly, I would point out the media program is something that's governed for the most part by the students, for the students. In fact, the Ithaca City School District Student News Network, we're giving it that label on purpose because of our success through the Boynton Student News Network, and now the students are engaged, and you saw from an earlier presentation, they're excited about it. So something that speaks directly to that would be the media program, and it's in flight and ready to go. That's
Samantha Little, associate principal at the high school, stepped up and I think perhaps has something to add.
Just because without this program, without Mr. Nunn's collaboration, we've had several students who have taken that initiative. They were very disengaged from the high school. They had even been in programs outside of the high school and then returned after 30 days at a community agency. And we are collaborating with IPD and also the Ithaca Youth Bureau, and we're running a girls group. It happens to be that Mr. Harris's wife is co-facilitating a group, Jahara Malcolm, we have Amanda Melendez, and we have Elisa Kaplan from Possibilities Program. So without Mr. Nunn's collaboration and us being able, a student said, look, and a parent came to us and said, I need this for my child or else she's not going to be able to make it here. And because of us having this program and being able to work with Mr. Nunn, he's provided funding. We're having an overnight on June 9th where we're bringing in a number of vendors. We're going to, I can't remember the name of the place, but it's a bed and breakfast. And we're going to talk about ways, just healthy eating habits. Someone's going to come in and do yoga. Someone's going to come and talk about keeping up their hair and nails. And these are topics that they've brought to us that are important to them. So that's just one example of a student, being able to represent their voice and a family saying this is what we need, and then our administrative team working in collaboration with this program to make it happen. The other piece is the whole edge dancers for the basketball. We don't have basketball cheerleaders, and that was another initiative that students said, look, why don't we have this? We want to have it. And because of the edge program, we were able to pilot and work in collaboration with Mr. Redmond and make that happen. With Dr.
Can I stop you? That's just exactly kind of what I don't want to have. It's kind of the hit or miss where a student kind of just on their own says, hey, we want to do this, who do we talk to, and kind of has that amount of energy to push it through the kind of bureaucracy. I want it to be facilitated, kind of we're reaching out to students saying, hey, orientation first day, hey, if there's, those kind of announcements, hey, do you want to start a club? This is who you talk to, those kind of things where there's actually...
Well, those systems are in place, and with all due respect, if we don't have the students' voices and those type of things happening also, and the fact that we're piloting with this, and it started kind of later in the year. It was kind of something that happened midstream. So this is a way to get a groundswell and to show how it's effective and work. And I think you kind of asked that question. I want to hear about the students and how their voice and how they're starting, what they'd like to see happen. So I think it's important to share both and understand that it's not an either or, but it's it's a collaboration of both of those. Yes, we do have Mr. Melander, our activities director, and we do have a very systematic way in any student can create any club they'd like to, and there's a process, and they're made aware of that through Link Crew, and also on the first day of school, and also in their individual meetings with school counselors, their educators, and also when they meet with their APs. So I think this is just something to support and enhance a process that already exists, but then to reach out to some of our additional students who might feel disengaged or disenfranchised by the school system due to it being historical with their families or just experiences that they've had.
One of the key portions that we should also highlight, our funders were supporting EDGE externally, are particularly focused on kids at risk, kids who are not being successful academically and or socially. So this initiative for young ladies is very powerful, and we're being very successful with it. In addition to that, we're organizing affinity groups where we talk to different groups about what their needs are or how they are synthesizing their education, both sociologically and academically. And we're being very successful with that because we are hearing from everyone.
So just to clarify, there have been some anonymous donations that the board has approved over the past few months, particularly the one with that Point Middle School for enriching the day generates excellent offerings. So we've taken those monies into our overall approach to this work, and we're using them effectively. But those individuals who are donating money wish to see this after-school support for young people academically, which is part of the overall approach to this work.
Dr. Brown, where's the archery club on here?
Oh, they're asking, the group that you recently met is...
We have an insurance agency here, right? So let's ask him that question first, and then he'll inform me whether he'll help me understand how to answer that
Sorry,
question.
there's no adult.
Harris, I mean,
It's kid one.
It should take place at Cornell.
Mr. Harris, nice peacock.
The Hunger Games just came out. Give it a few.
Yeah, exactly. Full metal jousting.
No, things are going very well.
We have a brand new rock wall, but we are going to have a rock climbing.
Right.
Well, that's the fact that that there was someone, the way that it came about, and you got some money to have a particular activity, sounds fantastic, and maybe not surprising that there's interests, there's groups out there, and that And I hope that if that happens, that we're open to plugging in, if that happens, that there's some interest, and they show up with money, or can fundraise, apparent, or whatever.
And that came out of that summit conversation in which we brought some key leaders to the table. Many of the folks at the table were also potential donors, and we were offered to support this as we finished the charter, and they saw very specifically what we were attempting to do. So we will now maybe potentially partner with some of our foundations around how can they help us raise some external funds for this program.
Well, that, or there's
Grants and also.
Or, I don't know, is there the possibility of fundraising and whatnot? I mean, Code Red Robotics does it, and I mean, I don't know why. They're laughing. What?
Oh, thought about hoodies.
And light bulbs and,
There's a limit to how many times you can go to the same donor.
There are a lot of funders interested in what we're doing, and certainly will continue to support us.
That's great.
Because we're successful even in the early stages.
And Fee, you've talked about, at-risk students and addressing that population.
Oh, directly.
Right, directly. But certainly, again, the vision is push beyond that and engage any and all students.
Oh, yeah, well.
Exactly.
Without a doubt.
Have you done a strong outreach to rural kids?
Yes.
To
Yes.
see what they,
Yes, in
and
fact.
what programs have they asked for?
Archery.
Yeah, we sat down with a cohort, it was 20 students that self-identified themselves as rural. And that was we'll have another agenda item for my conversation with you about what I learned from that conversation.
was incredible.
But it was powerful. It changed me as an educator to hear their perspectives on education and what their needs are. But they helped me understand what they would want before, after school as well. And archery was on the table. But they also snickered when they offered up archery. but they offered up archery and some other clubs that we are taking into account to meet their needs.
But I can understand the archery because bow season starts before.
They offer to teach it. They offer to teach it to other their peers.
And they're excited about the opening of the wellness center so that they can get in and do. And every day, they want to know when they can meet with Dr. Brown.
Yeah, it was powerful. I learned so much about everything.
Many of them were students in my 2nd and 4th grade class, so we have relationships with the family, and the folkways and mores are ongoing, and we're on the upswing, people. This is very exciting.
Yeah, great.
We appreciate that, Fee. And Dr. Brown, are we going to roll right into the high school?
Right into the high school.
Because we're already talking about it in high school anyway. Thank you, Fee.
Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome.
And we welcome Jared Powers, the principal of Ithaca High School, here in the room, in the building.
Good evening.
Good evening, Jared.
How are you? So thank you for having me and giving me a chance to kind of talk with you a little bit about some of our initiatives for next year and how they relate to the budget, and some reorganizational work that we'll be using to kind of frame the work that we'll be doing next year. Normally, when you come and you talk about budget, you talk about what you're going to do and how much it costs. I really want to get into tonight how we propose to do it. But I'll talk a little bit first about what it is that we're going to do. We're going after graduation rates. I told the staff on our first day together back in August that graduation rates was really how we're going to define, at least my time here at Ithaca High School, but how we're going to work to improve them for all students across the board. To do that, we need to have enrichment programs like what you just saw Fee present. We need to have extracurricular offerings, such as what Mr. Milani does in his role in student activities. But we also need to have systematic supports to help students who are struggling, right, overcome some of the gaps in their learning and some of the barriers in our teaching to ensure that they get the academic success and support that they need. So the budget proposal that Dr. Brown has included in his budget really works to kind of systematically address that. How much does it cost? Well, FTE-wise, it's essentially budget neutral. Everything that I've asked to do, I've paid for with an adjustment at FTE inside the building. These adjustments are based on some efficiencies that we can find in terms of how we look at classrooms, how we look at teaching assignments, how we go about thinking about what departments really need in order to operate effectively. And so there's no additional FTE request from the high school. And this plan gives the high school administration really greater flexibility to kind of approach the tasks that you're asking us to do in the 12-13 school year. So what I really want to talk about this evening is how do we propose to do it, right? And we all want to talk about graduation rates as a priority, right? I always say to people, don't tell me your priority, show me your budget, right? So here's our budget, and here's our priorities. So, next slide. Really what we're going to do is we're going to continue to embed student learning engagement at the heart of our daily instruction. So one of the things that Margaret and I have been working on since January is really kind of the supply side of the budget, right? Teaching supplies, learning supplies, materials and programming. So the budget that's before you uses the same dollar amount that we had going in, but kind of readjusted what we did in some of the lines to provide things like the PSATs for every 11th grader. We did that this year. We didn't initially budget for it. We made some adjustments kind of mid-year. We're going to continue that next year. We got a lot of really rich data about what our students wanted to do in the future, where we were in terms of math and English, not from a New York State Regents exam standpoint, but from a national comparison that we could use to kind of modify our instruction. It provides for funding for library books. We saw Ms. Bell, who was here at the last board meeting, talk about the need for improvement in our library services. It goes after technology. So there's a new language lab that's on its way for world languages. My friends from world languages are here. They're very excited about that. And it's going to really help students kind of connect not just with the traditional languages that we offer at Ithaca High School, but other languages that we don't directly teach as well. It provides for field trips for our students. A lot of our students are really struggling financially. And field trips are an important part of experiential learning and getting kids out into the community. And we have budgeted an amount of money that really can help support the bus costs, right? That helps defray the cost of the field trips overall. One of the things also it does really adjusts how some departments are funding. So you may see in the budget spreadsheet some wild percentages in terms of supply funding. What I encountered when I first became principal was kind of budget lines that were wildly different from one another. So you had an English department that was running on, let's say, $1,800 a year. But all students have to take English all 4 years. And, copies of To Kill a Mockingbird don't last forever. So you have $1,800 to do that. And then you had some departments that had an initiative, like a new state project or a new state program would come in, and they got massive funding one year. And then the next year, they just kind of raised it by 2% and never actually returned the money back. So you had huge disparities in terms of how various departments were funded. So this is kind of a leveling off of those responsibilities. It also expands the graduation coaching model. So in August, when I was hired, Dr. Brown and I were talking, I was like, I need someone who's really going to help us go up to graduation rates. And we kind of talked and we said, we should call it a dean of students. And we kind of went with it. And then we realized as the school year rolled around, the community expectation of the dean of students was more disciplinary. And that's not really what the individual does, right? He does a lot more with kind of connecting families with resources, connecting kids with tutors, connecting teachers with counselors, and helping us kind of streamline the overall process to ensure that kids are on track for graduation and getting access to Regents exams that they need with the support that they have. So this budget proposal would double our graduation coaching model. We have one for grades 9 and 10 and one for grades 11 and 12 to really kind of help us target students in 9th and 10th grade who we know statistically are where kids go off track, and that hinders their long-term graduation performance, but also gives us a chance to kind of really help and catch a lot of the kids in 11th and 12th grade who are exiting the building in a very short window of time, and we need to make sure that these services are in place for them. This budget allows us to expand the tutoring programs that we have, and really helps us. Come on an hour.
You gotta speed up.
I'm doing as fast as I can. I would like to point out for Seth, my iPad is being repaired by Mr. Moon right now. Otherwise, we'd be doing something. All right. So, it helps us expand our tutoring programs. It really helps us grow and target our interventions that are there. It also builds partnerships with community agencies. One of the things that Mr. Jordan has been working on with the Youth Bureau is the CEIP program, or a career exploration internship program. And this budget provides funding to kind of help see that idea come to fruition and get our kids out into the field earning credits. The budget also doubles the current staffing level of our attendance department. One of the board priorities is communication. If we are going to get serious about attendance and go for that 95% target number, we have to be able to communicate with families beyond a robocall. right? Your child has missed period 0, 3, 7, 9, and all types of things. So we will take the current staffing level, which now is 1.5 clerks, to 3. And so that will help us really communicate with families, give us real-time data, give us greater flexibility in supporting students who aren't coming to school, and really help us go after that initiative with some fidelity. One of the major changes really is about how we're going to approach intervention, right, and how we're going to do intervention work. And this has been a pretty tough week at the high school, kind of talking to folks who are involved in the current academic intervention services department. In consultation with district leadership, building leadership, we've decided that we are going to move intervention away from an AIS department and into the core departments in the building. So it's a shift away from kind of having a standalone department to help students who are at risk, to kind of saying, if you're struggling in social studies, you're now going to be helped by a social studies teacher. If you're struggling in math, you're going to be helped by a math teacher. If you're struggling in science, you're now going to be helped by a science teacher. So I'll take it.
We didn't want to interrupt Jeremy, so we'll keep going.
So this is a shift, right? I will tell you that our AIS teachers are world-class teachers. They're professional teachers. There is no greater pain for a leader than the pain of the heart, right? When you bring pain into the lives of people you care about, when you ask them to do something different. This has been tough, but I think it's the right decision for students. It's the right decision for our programming. And so under this plan, we would basically add a 1.0 FTE to English, math, science, social studies, and world languages, which is part of our core, because we need it for graduation. And it will allow us to kind of target intervention work in the core disciplines. So to answer Mr. Harris's question, I know it's coming, is tell me how that will help one kid. So we were piloting it in a very small version this year, 0.6 in science. And I met with Linda Newstead, who's a science intervention teacher today, and I said, we're going to be asked how this helps one kid. So tell me the story, Linda. And Linda said, I'll tell you the story of today. And I said, all right, go for it. And she said, there was a kid who came in to make up a test. And he was sitting there, and he got to the test, and the period rang, and he said, I'm done. So Linda looks at the test, and the test is like 3/4 of the way complete. And she says, you can't turn this in. He goes, but I'm out of time. She said, well, why don't you come back in the last 10 minutes of your lunch period and finish the test? So the kid comes back exactly at the last 10 minutes of his lunch period, right? And finishes the test. And this is a student that we, if we could, we would have to pay, right, to go to class. And he came in voluntarily and did this. And then he said, as he was leaving, are you going to be here tomorrow? Because I have some labs I need to make up, right? And that's the story of how this could work. And so when you look at the number of students that one model, that 0.6 model in science has served since really she started in October, to now 500 kids in science have voluntarily dropped in to work with their science teacher and to get help and get additional support. And some of them are kind of told by their teachers, you need to go there. And some of them are kind of self-selecting and saying, you know what, I need additional support, I need additional help in a discipline. So we're moving intervention to the core, and it's going to allow us to serve really a wider student population inside the building. So leadership structure at the high school. We're a big place, and the demands of the state are unfunded mandates, right? And they're growing quickly. So we have DASA. We have huge APPR commitments. We have a commitment to RTI. We have a commitment to PBIS. Community and I have a commitment to master scheduling and making sure it works in a way that's going to help all students, right, get some courses. And then we have some larger school-wide initiatives that we're kind of confronting, whether it's a drug and alcohol abuse situation that's really ravaging our student population, safety inside the building, and the Common Core standards. So all of that is systems work, right? Setting up systems, making sure things function well, making sure we kind of undertake the work in a way that is not only efficacious, right, but is going to be a way that works best for kids and for teachers, and to kind of troubleshoot all the new changes that are coming our way. So this budget proposal keeps the 3 APs at the high school, but breaks them up a little differently. So if the graduation coaches support us in attendance, and the graduation clerks support us in attendance. We're going to move attendance to those individuals. That hopefully will free up a large portion of our time at the administrative level to really allow one AP to kind of help us with those major systems and school-wide initiatives, and then break out the caseload between two APs in terms of discipline. We're also going to be building some teams, and Sheila and I have been talking a little bit about how we can do this from an FTE perspective. That will give us kind of 3 school counselors on each team, a graduation coach on each team, a psychologist on each team, and a social worker on each team, along with an AP. And those would be our standing RTI teams. RTI has been really hard to get off the ground at Ithaca High School. And it's really because there's not a concrete team, right, that you can use and kind of call upon to support students. So we've kind of built this model. We call them AIM meetings, or academic intervention meetings, and we want to expand and kind of grow that out next year to really support students who are at risk. The TOSA 2.0 FT. I want to talk a little bit about this because I think this is a pretty interesting situation. In the teacher's contract, right, there's a provision that calls for department chairs. Department chairs, not leaders, are to be administratively certificated, and they are to assist in the observation of teachers. So they are teachers, or administratively certified, elected by teachers, to go in and perform observations. Currently, there are no administratively certified department chairs in English, math, science, social studies, world language, career and tech, library, and potentially next year, student services and special ed. So people say to be a leader, you have to effectively delegate. There's no one to delegate to. Then when you look at the observation load in the building, it's doubling. So next year, assuming no one retires, we will have a minimum of 300 observations to conduct in the building. And that's assuming you're going to see everyone just the minimum number of times. That's a huge workload, because there's a pre-observation, the observation, the post-observation, the write-up, and then if you write in the write-up, I'd like to come back to your classroom and see you do this again, or see if there's growth in this area, or check for improvement, or hey, that was great, can I come in and kind of look at this and develop some ideas so I can model it in other classrooms? That is a tremendous amount of work. So we have, through the budget process, built up the FT to a 2.0 teacher on special assignment model, which would allow us to go after these observations in a way that's meaningful. And we're really looking at it in what I could call STEM 1 and STEM 2, right? So for STEM 1 is kind of science and technology and engineering and math, so you can see kind of career and technology tucked in there. And STEM 2 for me is social studies, theater, English, and music, right? And we throw world languages in there. So we would kind of have 2 TOSAs, one for STEM 1 and one for STEM 2, and they would really help us with the observation load that at a minimum would encumber over 900 periods of administrative time without writing anything. That's just conducting the process. Assuming it all goes well, assuming there's no appeal, assuming you don't have to go through and do it again. So their need for that support is great. Additionally, these individuals would be helping us kind of align professional development, right? I'm going back and really supporting teachers and saying, here's an idea of a workshop I know is going on in BOCES or at OCM BOCES or in Syracuse, and allowing our teachers some flexibility, perhaps with release time to work with their PLCs to really kind of coordinate curriculum. They really help us advance the work. The 3 administrators, the 3 APs and myself could do it, but that's honestly all we're going to do. And there's a school to run, and there's curriculum to change, and there's people got to get graduated. And so it's going to be a partnership and a team collaboration. This ultimately will enable us to give teachers and teams data about how they're performing, much like what you saw tonight with the Teachscape information, and enable us to kind of pivot to really support the kids with what they're saying needs to be improved to increase their educational outcomes. So as Dr. Brown meets with these affinity groups and find out what they need, that's data that we're going to be able to kind of bring into the classrooms and really help move the work forward. So that's the work we would like to undertake. There's some ambitious planning behind all of it, but I think we can do it, and I think we're prepared for the task.
There must be questions. I saw Sean first.
I want to hear the unanswerable question first, and then I'll go. So I'll yield to Mr. Harris.
I can actually see Sean. Go ahead now.
I think I saw to do that too. You increased the reading FTEs by 2. Explain why that's
So we
important.
kept 2, right? And so, in other words, the AIS department is currently structured all of reading certified individuals. We kept 2 because reading is important, and there's a huge skill deficit. But we're going to have reading teachers teach reading and actually help us go after the skill set. It is good, right, that the reading teachers are helping and serving as tutors and mentors and coaches for other academic subject areas. But my difficulty in understanding the underlying causes of the War of 1812, right, may not be related to my ability to read, right? It may be related to my ability to not genuinely connect with the content or understand what's being asked of me. So we're keeping 2 because we recognize that there's a need, and we are building programming, whether it's through Read 180, or System 44, or concurrent enrollment courses with TC3, to really ensure that our students have access to the reading that they need.
So in my conversations with young folks, I hear a number of things talking about the impact their educational experience. One of which you just referenced was the curriculum has very little relevance to my life. So explain to me how this plan addresses that for some of our young folks. And I have a couple others, so just don't get too comfortable.
Okay. We can have a colloquy. And so
I also need a thesaurus. Would you use it earlier? Use another big word. Another
Whatever that means, but go ahead.
So
I'm just one of those rural kids that Dr. Brown's talking about.
I'm with you. I'm with you, Jared. Keep it focused. Come on.
My father was a drug addict. All right. So the general idea is this. Through the funding of things like the language lab, through the funding of field trips, we're taking the kids later on in April on a Great Depression field trip all over Tompkins County. And so they're going to see all the Works Projects sites that they encounter every day in their lives. We're going on a trip at the end of May. We're calling it the Marco Polo field trip. And we're kind of exploring all the places Marco Polo visited by visiting different places in Ithaca. By having the funding to do that, to go after those things, to create those projects, by bringing in speakers like Margaret Washington, by having the Aaron Copland Lincoln Day concert, by doing those initiatives, by finding that funding, you start to make the connections for kids. At the same time, if you look at the one-to-one classrooms, we've just got 26 smart boards inside the high school. There are 96 classrooms. There are 26 smart boards, right? We're not there yet, but this enables us to continue to move forward, to kind of make those real-world connections and bring technology and bring the experiential learning into the hands of kids. Also, through an observational process, right? If you have the time to have someone to go back and do an observation, and then have another observer go in and do an observation, and then have a conversation about it, not just for inter-rater reliability, but to actually have a genuine conversation about the teaching and learning that's going on at that grade level, you can start to make the fundamental curricular shifts that you're looking for. They're going to keep kids engaged.
Another one, fantastic. Another one is the role of discipline, or the perception that discipline is meted out in very interesting ways to various groups of students.
So I hear that, and I'm going to, since you're a policy guy, I'm going to talk about policy for a second. There are 2 perspectives, right, that you kind of hear. One is the high school's out of control, or the high school suspending certain groups of kids or suspending everyone, right, depending on who you talk to. I think what we are attempting to do is use discipline as a way that helps kids actually remain more engaged in the school process, and here's why. When you have a high school graduation rate of African American kids 55%, when you have a high school graduation rate of special ed kids at 55%, they're probably not on many people's radar, right? When you actually start the process of uncovering and unpacking what those reasons are, you are starting to shed light on a lot of issues, right? Some of them are discipline, some of them are skills-based, some of them are curricular engagement-based, but ultimately, some of the things that we are running through superintendent's hearings are gross insubordination. So from a policy perspective, how do you prove gross insubordination? if an event only occurs once, you've only been suspended once. How do you get the student the mental health counseling, the drug and alcohol abuse counseling, the social work that they need? If you can't access those services until you've taken it to the highest level, and to take it to the highest level, you need to repeatedly suspend. And so that's a policy issue. And I'm willing to partner with you to look at ways we can access those services more quickly to support our students. But there's a legal process that's involved in there. But I think what people are saying, or what people are realizing, without necessarily having the right terminology, is that we're putting more kids on the radar and trying to develop more plans to actually help kids before they find themselves unsuccessful graduating with 1 or 2 credits.
Yeah, I'm sure it's something that the team is looking at as well, but I think our discipline data, particularly amongst particular cohorts, is worthy of further investigation.
Absolutely.
And part of what I've heard you saying in terms of a couple of the answers is extremely student focused, and that's fantastic. There's a slight hint of the deficit that students bring, as opposed to either an additive approach or what I hear. The other thing I hear from students repeatedly from all different walks is the very expectations that are placed upon their supposed academic potential. And so I'm wondering how the team is trying to understand the ways in which, for some groups of students, they feel like teachers don't expect them to excel. And therefore, either the work they're given is elementary type work, or the way in which, my famed story, a student walked into a physics class with 4.3 GPA, and his first day class teacher said, "Are you lost?" Right? So how do we negotiate those sort of experiences? And not that these are just about our staff and our faculty, right? I understand there's multiple parts of it, but I'm interested in that part as well.
So,
how are you raising the expectations for all students?
So I don't think we're approaching as those students come to us with a deficit. I think what this budget and this reorganization acknowledges is that there's a deficit in our infrastructure, right? There's a deficit in our infrastructure when the students can't find books in the library that they can relate to. There's a deficit in our infrastructure when they don't have an intervention teacher that they can access in their content area. There's a deficit in our infrastructure when there isn't a coach and someone saying, you know, you can do this, and we do believe in you, and this is what our expectations are set forth. So I don't think I'm approaching this from a model that the students are coming to us with a deficit. What I think I'm acknowledging is that systematically and historically, over 15 principles in 30 years, we have failed to build the systemic infrastructure to ensure that all students can be successful.
Right, and I'm not saying that was you pushing that, but if everything we're trying to do is fixing the student somehow, that's my point about a deficit approach, right? Students' mental health facilities, student needs, additional remedial stuff, that's all right for many of our students. There are also other things that are impacting it as well.
Absolutely.
Sure.
No question.
I think I'll hit Chuck. I got more, but I'll hit Jared.
Okay.
We'll keep going. Go ahead.
I have a question about the constitution of the classrooms and what in this plan specifically addresses many of us have expressed a desire to walk down the hallway one day and not look into the window and know that class is an academic effort. And then that has nothing to do with race. Did I say that again on camera? That has nothing to do with race. Right? So how do we actually explode these situations where we know the children are all been bunched together and they'll never see the entire curriculum and they'll never be challenged, and they have friends who are actually in some of the accelerated classes who desperately themselves would like to help these kids because they're just going to go home and have more time to play together. And so how do we explode those doors?
So that's a multi-layered answer, right? And it's interesting. So the other day I was walking outside for some reason with Connie Evelyn, and she said, "Do you know I was at an elementary school today and the kids were learning Spanish?" And I was like, "No, I didn't know you were at elementary school today and the kids were learning Spanish." But in one elementary school in the district, the kids are learning Spanish, and the other elementary schools, the kids aren't. They all come to Ithaca High School. So there's a huge gradation in terms of the skill sets that walk in our door. We know we have a third to the half of the kids enter our school who have failed the 8th grade math assessment, right? And so that's a major issue. We are looking at ways in which we can be more student-centered and give students more choices in terms of the course offerings that they're looking at and helping them find some real academic rigor and success. So I'll give you some examples. 12th grade English, right, will still exist at the AP level, will still exist at the Regents and Honors level next year, but instead it will consist of, how many I remember, 4 or 6 elective-based courses, right, that students can kind of pick a half year of each. Some of them have to be focused on reading, some of them have to be focused on writing, but it's more elective-based in that regard. We are looking at the way in which we approach math, right, and Algebra 1 at the high school, to ensure that students, when they do come in, are actually given time to kind of figure out their level and not just immediately placed in a certain locale by dint of a grade that they received in May of their 8th grade, 7th grade year. We are looking at ways in which we can increase the way students access science. So if you look at our enrollment for forensics, for example, this year we had about 60 kids sign up for forensics. Next year I have over 104, right, students signing up for forensics. So students are finding, as we build these courses, as we build these different programming options, ways to kind of remain engaged in the process and actually find the courses that best meet their needs. We have miles to go. We have a tremendous amount of work. But I think if you look at our department leadership at the high school, if you look at the AP level leadership at the high school, people are working continuously to break down those barriers, to increase access, and to build robust academic programming at all levels to ensure kids that can be successful.
Go, Brock.
I'd like to actually attest to that. My first week of calculus, our teachers handed out a big sheet of who wanted to tutor maybe people from younger grades, and most of the class signed up. But the thing is, most of those people that signed up didn't get people matched with them because the kids are too scared to find a tutor or something like that. So I think that if we create initiatives that benefit the students and benefit the people that need the help, it all goes from there.
Jarrett, this is a budget discussion. You've talked about the reorganization of Ithaca High School, which I'm very impressed with the plan. I am well aware that Ithaca High School is a Cine school. We have other Cine schools in this district. We are a district in need of improvement, in my opinion. So, I mean, it just leads to that fact. So, we are going to go to a budget soon. So, are there other resources that you believe you need in this next budget?
So what I will ask you, right, is to keep the teachers in reserve that you have in the budget. When I only budget, this is a rollover budget in many respects for our departments. We're not asking for anything new. Right? But when we have 60 kids this year taking forensics and 104 who want to take it next year, right, that might precipitate a need for some FTE. Additionally, as Dr. Brown was talking about, we now have Q building. Right? Don't ask me what happened to the letters in between, I don't know. And so...
Besides that stuff.
Not me.
Well, I don't see that. I'm curious about that.
All right. So Q building is pretty large, right? I don't know how many doors Eldred had added to the high school, but I'm sure someone knows. That will be a need, I think, in terms of how we approach the PLC process, how we approach supervision. Dr. Brown and I certainly communicate regularly about the safety and security of the high school. It's a concern for all of us, and so we are working collaboratively together to come up with a plan to move that forward.
And we certainly made the point in the past when we have one group of students or one cohort that is not successful, then that shows up on a radar at the state level, then we get a Cine status. That the issue is not that one group, that one cohort. The issue is the total system. How are you teaching all students? And I believe Dr. Brown and his reorganization, certainly at Ithaca High School, that those reorganizations deal with rethinking how we educate students in this district, and that's where we're trying to go. Correct, guys? But you're still, at this point, we're still looking at, if we maintain the teachers in reserve, that's what you're looking at as of right now. That's the ask.
And we'll talk more about some other needs in the next segment we were talking about.
And we do have, we do have a few more items to get to. Go ahead. Well, go ahead, Judy.
How many teachers in reserve?
We have 4 currently.
In the district?
Yeah.
4.
In the district.
In the budget. And the budget includes 4 teachers in reserve each year.
Go ahead, sir.
First, I want to say that I'm happy to have this conversation now. You came in this year, and we were waiting for just this type of dialogue of giving us your best thoughts. And what's really impressive about this is you're restructuring and creating systems in a way that gets to students. That mirrors exactly what's happening in our central office that we're structuring it to kind of have the service model to serve our students. So it's impressive, number one, because it happens so quickly, but it's also impressive because it's in line with what we're trying to do district-wide. I want to express a board opinion here, and I want to make it clear that you know how much we support this type of work, and then this type of thinking and this type of plan, and how, as a board, we're behind this type of thing 100%. So you should know that. But I say that, and you should also know that we want more. We want, we want things like this is not over. This type of restructuring and reorganization and looking at how we do things and how we serve our students is the new standard for everyone. And I'm glad you brought this, and we support this type of thinking 100%. So you should know that, and keep at it.
Thank you.
Brad, did you want?
Well, I was just going to say, absolutely, this is what we want. I think you've heard me say before, I mean, what I'm hearing you say is you want excellence, and you want to raise the expectations for everyone, not just the students, but for the teachers as well. I mean, one of the things that, I've said before, I don't want you here, and I don't want Dr. Brown here to make an incremental change. I want to leapfrog. And that's what I think I hear you saying, but we need to raise those expectations for everyone.
Well, quick question. One thing well, first of all, are there more? Is there more to this?
No.
In there, is there some spot in which you've hidden the issue about our security? I'm not sure what to call them.
I think
Apparatus.
That's a topic I think that we're going to address. Is that?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about it. Yeah.
Tonight?
Yeah.
Yes.
Then I will zip for this.
And Susan, do you have a quick one?
Yeah, I want to address, I would wait to reprisal, so I'm not going to make a long statement, but I do want to bring up a point, and I have spoken to Jared about this. So this has to do with the financial response and the questions that Seth has brought up and others about whether there's additional cost. When you have a TOSA, there was a finding called Deventis a couple years ago, and it said that if you're a teacher on any assignment, you have to teach 40%. In addition, we have not negotiated peer review. If we're going to look at increased support, and I am very much in favor of some of the reorganization and the leapfrogging, but we can't put teachers on special assignment in the role of observers and evaluators, because they cannot observe and evaluate their colleagues. We do PLCs. This is an administrative job. It is very important. I think you really need the people power. I think everything you've said is true, but then these need to be people who have an administrative role or are not in the Ithaca Teachers Association umbrella and contracted. Therefore, the remuneration is different because they would be considered administrators or directors and not teachers. They cannot have a special assignment unless they're teaching 40%. And we also don't have people evaluating themselves. I'm glad to discuss this with you and what it means, whether we give it a different title. I'm not asking you to take that piece out of the proposal. I'm just looking at a different name for them other than TOSA, and the remuneration will be something that you have to negotiate with the individuals because they need administrative certification. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Go ahead.
I just need to ask you, I need to understand what you just said, so help me. I think you lost me. If there is a superstar teacher in the high school, someone
couple
who
of those.
engages, I know who they are.
Okay.
Are you saying that you would prefer not to have those teachers review the work of other teachers, or are you saying it actually can't be done? Because right now it's in violation of the agreement.
It can't be done. I'm in favor. I know some of the people who have been suggested for these positions. They're fabulous. They're wonderful. I think it would be terrific. But they cannot, under the current plan and the state plan and this law that happened, which had to do with how you accrue seniority and what is considered a teacher, you must teach 40% in your tenure area to remain as a teacher. Otherwise, you're an administrator. It's out of contract work, out of the area. So to do this, you could give that teacher, let's say, a leave of absence for a year or two while they fill this position, call it something else. I don't know what you want to call it. I called it Überhochum, which is a Yiddish word, means overseer. We didn't come up with a good name for it. But then you have to look at what you have to, how you have to remunerate these people.
Probably don't want to use that word.
Yeah.
But I get it.
I know, I'm looking for the right term. If you have a suggestion, I'd be glad.
I think perhaps Dr. Brown has a suggestion on
Okay.
how to
Just so-
treat this.
yeah,
As we transition to the next segment, we're going to talk about how we're transitioning staff and addressing some of these issues that we know are going to arise. We thought about these things, and we have some solutions and recommendations we wish to put on the board in public session and in executive session.
And you have some of those suggestions now.
Yeah, some of those will be coming.
Because Eldred, if they function as in an administrative duty, then they need to be called administrators.
So maybe you can hang out there. You're doing a pretty good job in that hot seat right there.
Well, I think we're still talking about it. Some items that affect Ithaca High School, so if you go ahead, Dr. Brown.
As you've probably been hearing in the media, the state budget has been finalized, that there's such a thing as a state budget being finalized. And as we anticipated, I'm getting
For the moment.
as we anticipated, there were some additional funds that will be coming to us as an organization. Some in one-time funding with the help of our Assemblywoman Barbara Lipton, and some that is just coming in as a regular state aid formula. We're anticipating, and we're still working through the numbers and how they will particularly relate to us, but we're thinking we're going to have about $400,000 or so in new dollars. Again, much of it is one-time funds, and some of it will be in just in the regular state aid projection. So we're bringing to you a recommendation about how to use those additional dollars. Now, as we've already put together some parts, most of the budget, we're hoping to give some of those dollars back to the taxpayers in the form of lowering the tax levy, which we said is one of the lowest tax levies in the region and the state. We're recommending that we lower it even further from 2.4% to a 2.3%. We're also recommending that we expend less from our reserves. We are using our savings accounts in this current budget proposal, and we're asking that we use less of it because we have new dollars. And then finally, staff transitions, and this covers much. This covers the transitions that we're seeing at the central level and in our buildings, knowing that we're going to have some overlap. A lot of institutional knowledge exists that we need to account for through the transition. So having some additional dollars to allow folks to stay on a little longer, or to have some conversations about what that would look like to offer some support to the new people, we see ourselves using some of the dollars for that. The new spaces, and looking at the new spaces on paper is one thing, actually walking through them is quite another. We do know that we have some needs as far as safety and security at our campus right now. So Jared and I have been talking much about what that would look like in the form of additional hall monitors or additional support person for not only just the safety and security, but the actual programming, so that we can build world-class programming and what are world-class facilities, something that we're hoping to use these additional dollars to support. So 3 recommendations. We'll be tighter about exactly how much, down to the penny, we will propose, but we know going from a 2.4 to a 2.3% tax levy increase is around $70,000+ or so. So we know we want to go there, giving that money back to taxpayers. And these other pieces, we'll work through we'll talk more about what the additional support will look like, what we need to do more in teacher reserve, knowing that we have some increased enrollment or requests to be in certain courses at the high school, and then some of the transitions with, some of the feedback we're getting from folks to make sure we don't transition too quickly. We have some support, and we're embedding some support for the folks who will be here and who won't, and who are transitioning into other roles. So that's our recommendation, and we'd love to hear your thoughts tonight so we can go.
I guess the question is, what do you need tonight? I mean, we hope to adopt a budget at our next meeting.
Sure.
Presumably we will. We haven't had, since we're not spending all our time talking about cuts,
Yes.
We're having a different conversation than we've had in other years.
Sure.
What do you need from us in the way of direction tonight?
Yes.
I mean, obviously I like the idea that we're going to slightly lower the tax levy. You've got one-time money from the Assemblywoman.
Yes.
I would think that would be appropriate for your staff transitions,
Yes.
and then the balance
Go back
to reserves would seem to be the appropriate way to go. I mean, do we want to?
That's what I would like. I'm hoping to hear that again.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't know whether we want to have a motion or if we just want to suggest that that's our direction to prepare the final budget for the next meeting based on those parameters.
this is a voting meeting, a budget, a motion would be
All right, well,
appreciated.
I'd propose that we give the superintendent direction to prepare a final budget with the tax levy reduced to 2.3%, one-time money, roughly, don't be tied exactly to that dollar amount, but roughly the one-time money for transition, and the balance to reduce the amount of money we're taking out of reserves.
A second.
Second by Seth. Other questions? Go ahead, Seth.
The only part that I may not be so eager about is the $70,000 reduction from the 2.4 to 2.3. It appears as though, you know, if you spread that out over our tax base, that spreading $70,000, although it drops us down that percentage, maybe $70,000 that we need to, you know, talk about some of the funding requests that seem apparent in this plan, the teachers in reserve may be an issue. So I have a concern about that, and my concern is based on, because I actually felt that 2.4 was actually a pretty fair number in light of all the increases we faced as far as retirement, healthcare. So I was comfortable with that, and you know, I understand the need to go lower, but I also heard some of the high school issues that seem pretty likely, and that $70,000 may come in handy and spread out over the 30,000 Ithacans. It may be something that, but you know, I'll support this, but you know, that was my concern.
Well, I mean, I'll speak. I initially said let's reduce it even further, the tax levy. I'm, you know, concerned about people's ability to pay. You know, given the economic situation, I mean, yeah, our community's better off than many others, but I was actually looking at going further. So I was kind of striking a balance of the state is giving us slightly more. We all know where that money came from. It came from the same group of taxpayers. Wanted to give some of that, not give it back. I want to take less from them. You know, take less. So I think from a, you know, just from the visual standpoint for the taxpayer, they know that we got a slight increase when the final budget came on. I think we should be looking at it that way. I'm actually hopeful that with the growth in the tax base in the community, that the average person's bill will go up less than 2% when we're all done. It has in the past, so I'm actually hopeful this will help keep it less than
2%.
If the tax base grows, remember, Jay, we vote a levy, which is a dollar amount, which we then convert to dollars per thousand. But if there's more thousands, more assessed value, then your rate, your individual rate, goes down.
It wasn't a deal breaker.
No, I understand. I just wanted you to hear. You know, I had actually started, you know, thinking slightly the other way, and was thinking, you know, based on the conversations on the things we've got moving at the high school and such, I was interested in keeping a few more dollars in there. And the other thing I'll say is, remember, with the tax cap, you know,
tax levy limit.
Tax levy limit of 3.1. This puts another 1/10 in the bank. I mean, again, I got to go out and ask somebody to pay it. So it's not, you know, money in the bank, but it's an ability to get it with a 50% vote instead of a 60% vote. If next year or the year after we determine, well, maybe we should raise 3% instead of 2%.
Right, could you just tell people again what the bank idea is?
Sure. The tax levy limit that the legislature and the governor, you know, people all call it the 2% limit, but it's not actually 2%. You'll recall about a month ago, we went through the calculation, and you've all read it for the city and the county. They went through the same drill, and it doesn't come out to 2%. There's various exceptions and so forth, and ours comes to 3.1 or 3.11? 3.11%. If you go over 3.11, you've got to have a 60% vote. Below that, a regular majority passes your budget. If you don't go to 3.11, if you use a number lower, we're allowed to bank that amount. And just to use an example, let's say next year when we do the calculation, we are at 2%. Our limit is 2, but we've banked this difference. We could go to 2.8 and still be at a 50%, a simple majority vote, not a supermajority at 60%. So it gives us some flexibility in the future, but as you know, it always is based on consent of the voters. I mean, our budget is voted on, so yes, it's nice, we only need consent of 50%, but it's still consent of the voters if we go back with it.
And just to be clear, Brad, for myself, the motion on the table right now is to deal with that issue, but that dollar number, that $107,817,000.
Well, it's going to change slightly based on this, and that's what I say they'll bring it back
It's going to change
next.
a little bit?
Yes, it'll change a little bit.
Just to be...
But the tax levy, we're suggesting would be set at 2.3%.
Go ahead, Elder, then Judy.
My question is about the staff transition. Does that description from your perspective, Dr. Brown, or that number include some of the job-embedded instructional coaching that you plan to push into the schools, or is that number somewhere else?
That's different. The instructional coaching model that we're going to build is going to take a year. I mean, we're working on that next year. What it may address are some of the issues that were brought to our attention. Well, we've been thinking about that were highlighted by Ms. Midler earlier. In that illumination or that transition of staff. This may help us with that, or will help us with that piece as well.
I second Seth's original proposal to keep it at 2.4. I think $70,000 is like a quarter to taxpayers, but I am very concerned, and we didn't get to the security issue at the high school, and I don't know what that's going to cost, and I'd like to have money for that. And I would like, as we've discussed before, to keep a cushion more than 4 teachers on reserve, because I think we're going to have a need for that. So.
Other comments?
Folks may imagine I am not in support of a 2.4% tax levy. In fact, I appreciate Brad trying to split the difference. I try to push this as low as possible. And for some folks, that quarter may not seem like a lot. And for other folks, that quarter makes a difference between eating and not eating, or paying heat and not paying heat. And so the lowest we can possibly have the tax levy, with keeping in mind that the city's raising its taxes, that the county's raising its taxes, the feds may actually raise their taxes for the first time. There's just some rumors of that. Like, there's ways in which the lowest we can make it on our end and still provide the highest quality exceptional program we can will be well. And it seems like we have a little bit of opportunity to do that. So I would push us to not think about that 2.4 and to really pay some attention to the hardships that many of our taxpayers, self-included, are facing.
Other comments? Jay, go ahead.
I'll vote for the motion for all the reasons that were mentioned. Good points made by everybody else, but it's a balance.
Very good. With no other comments, Chris Malcolm did have to step out, so it is the 8 of us now. Correct? All in favor? That would be Rob, Eldred, Brad, Jay, Sean, Seth, Chris, not Chris, Pat. Those opposed would be Judy. So passes 7-1.
Great. Thank you for your support. You know, get to work. Now you can get out of here. Now you see why I wanted to do things with a worth it.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks. So, Dr. Brown, we addressed Proposition 2. We essentially settled on a 2.3 tax levy limit. Well, tax levy for the tax levy. Right, there you go. We're getting closer to a budget, Dr. Brown.
Yeah, and I think we have we're developing a deep understanding of what's in the budget along while we're talking about numbers too. So thank you. Great.
And it is great to talk about what's in the budget rather than what's not in it. Yeah. So, and we appreciate that. Dr. Brown, anything else regarding school?
Budget votes 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. We'll adopt in 2 weeks.
Right, that is a point to be made. On April 17th, we will have more budget discussion, but we will adopt the budget on April 17th for the 2012-2013 school year. So we are looking forward to comments over the next 2 weeks. We talked about that earlier in the meeting, how that can be done. Always happy to take comments directly, wherever we may be. So Dr. Brown, I think we'll go ahead and any board announcements.
Just
Go ahead, Brad.
Just a question, looking at our dates of meetings, have we set a date for the required public hearing on the budget?
We haven't set a date. We haven't set a date, no.
Okay, yeah, we should get that up on the website.
We'll put out a communication to the board.
Yeah.
And we'll have it set.
Yeah, I recommend you get that
Yeah.
settled so that we can have a night. If people have things they need to tell us, they have the opportunity.
Right. That's our. That's after that's in May. What, May 5th?
That's the crazy thing. We
Yeah,
adopt,
after we
and
adopt.
then we're required to have a hearing. Yes, I know. But Susan, it's required. So.
I got it, I heard you.
And I'm not saying we have to vote on the BOCES budget on that particular Wednesday, and that's
Is that on the
off the top of my head. I'm not sure when that is, so we need to get that on the schedule.
We'll get those dates out to the board.
And
Something like
and Brad, I would point out the next
But
finance.
that's not on the calendar here either.
Right.
We've got.
It's a Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
Do we know what Wednesday is?
17th, is that a Wednesday, or are you talking about?
17th is a Tuesday.
Yeah, it's the 18th.
So we're gonna meet on the 17th and then come and meet again on the 18th.
For a short
Lucky us.
meeting on the 18th.
And do we know what time we intend to do that?
Oh, I like that, 5:30.
I'm with Jay on that too, within the years prior.
5:30?
5:30?
Yeah, 5:30.
No, April 18th at 5:30.
A quorum at 5:30.
Right, we need a quorum
That's
in
what I'm-
5
We need a
minutes.
quorum.
That's why you need to get it on the
Kira, you're
calendar.
taking that out, you're sending it out to all the board members, please. So,
April 18th, 5:30, for BOCES budget vote.
Yep.
April 17th is the regular board meeting, which we plan to adopt.
Would you just,
adopt our budget?
and Kira, would you just confirm that's the Wednesday we have to do it?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Before I send it out, I'll make sure.
Thank you.
and can we adhere to Brad's other requests as well about,
We'll have the date for you tomorrow.
Yeah, let's get that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know where you want it, if you want to have it here or if you want to have it.
Actually, we did it here. I thought we did it
Only if you,
before a regular meeting.
none or 1 or 2, 3 people show up.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a small group here, and then it's televised, but if you think you're gonna have 50 people, they need to be somewhere else.
Yeah, we'll have a contingency plan.
Yeah, no, there's nothing controversial.
And the only other change in the schedule, the last finance committee meeting before we adopt the budget is changed April 16th. Correct? Brad?
Correct.
Just
We
highlight
moved-
that if.
Because the
Schools-
board voting meetings moved, we had to move the finance committee so that we can have it before the second voting meeting of the month.
So that is Monday night. That's, again, another opportunity to take a look at numbers, take a look at the budget, open committee meeting before we adopt on the 17th.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, okay.
On Monday the 16th.
And I don't, if anyone have any other committee issues?
There's policy committee on Thursday evening, this Thursday, 5 p.m.
Okay. Without any further ado, I'll accept motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Without objection.
We going into,
Sure.
No, we're done. Susan, did you?
Yeah, I want
You're
to thank
adjourned,
you.
but go ahead.
No, I want to thank everybody for their attention to the matters of the reorganization, understand our support for it, that this is a matter of what we have to do appropriately and legally. The other thing is just to make a note to the public that even though we don't have layoffs, this reorganization will affect people, and there are staff members that we will lose to other districts and other places, and we're doing our very best to try to preserve every possible position we can, so there'll be a place for every teacher who's committed to our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. We are adjourned.
Actually,